Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, I guess, holiday edition. So we do this every week. I fucked up my spiel. I fucked up my spiel just for Christmas. No, it's a Misery Loves Company is a weekly reading series that hosts outsider and transgressive writers. And yeah, fuck, before I fucking fuck this up anymore, let's get going here. So first up tonight is Adam.
Can you hear me okay?
And sorry, what was that, Adam?
Can you hear me? Fine?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
And you're going to be reading in a Christmas themed excerpt from your novel Goddard, right?
Yes. Yeah, I selected this just because it happens around the Christmas time. By way of background, this is a man in his early 60s who has an obsession with the wife of his youngest son. And at one point, surreptitiously moved into the other half of their duplex and installed a giant two-way mirror between the two. And so I give that background only because this is kind of taken from page 150. So there's a lot that has happened already, but I'll start. I, me, he, him, who, whom, that's me, the Goddard, the genial gin sipper, the pallid progenitor, the liquid lusus logodotalist, the son of the god of wine and divine madness, meekly humming, softly stirring, nimbly tending the catbird seat of my creamy, cushy couch. Your average gentleman, faith, I promise I am he, him. I am no different than any other man letting the breeze pass idly by the fine fibers of his jacket. As such, you might pass me by in the street. You might, sir, you never know. You might just drive on by. You might be so kind as to stand too close to me in the coffee line. You'll know it as I when the mustard odor of rosemary wafts up to your nose from the swan's down lining of my jealous pocket and endows you with an uneasy apprehension gratis. Do not move an inch. I am on the verge of something awful. Stay a while. Stand right there and enjoy the burning wood. Brahms No. 1 in G minor is playing from a Sony compact disc player resting on an antique French marble top brown oak buffet with overstated curves, hand-carved shell designs, Victorian poles, and a little inlaid engraving of an angelfish on a beveled wave on the middle paneled door. For anyone interested in the Hungarian dances, I don't recommend anything other than the London Festival Orchestra conducted by Alfred Schultz. This is available on The Best of Brahms by Salker Limited, 1991. Over the course of the early winter, I had refurnished the townhome with ornate period pieces from all over the globe. For smells, I had invested it with a rich, piercing odor redolent of chlorine. It was no longer your average walled-in place with windows. How fun it is to read and write about a room. Model No. 1, Russian squalor. It was a tiny closet about 6 paces long of a most pathetic appearance, with yellow, dusty wallpaper coming off the walls everywhere, and with such a low ceiling that a man of any height at all felt creepy in it and kept thinking he might bump his head every moment. Furniture was in keeping with the place. There were 3 old chairs, not quite in good repair, a painted table in the corner on which lay several books and notebooks. From the mere, this is in italics and my eyes are failing me, 12-point font, and I need new glasses. I can read the regular, it's the italics that's giving me a problem. I'm just going to skip ahead. And finally, a big comfy sofa, which occupied almost the entire wall and a half. Let me use my phone. The width of the room, and had once been upholstered in chintz, but was now all ragged and served as R's bed, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Model No. 2, Russian concupiscence. Main character, Humbert the Hummer. Time, Sunday morning in June. Place, sunlit living room. Props, old candy-striped Davenport, magazines, photograph, Mexican knickknacks. The late Mr. Harold E. Hayes, God bless the good man, had engendered my darling at the siesta hour in a blue-washed room on a honeymoon trip to Veracruz, and mementos among these Dolores were all over the place. Vladimir Nabokov. Model No. 3, German Bohemian. It was a strange place, decorated in a single style, the bizarre whimsicality of an artist. Etruscan and Japanese vases, Spanish fans and daggers, Chinese parasols and Italian mandolins, African shell horns and antique statuettes, Colorful Rococo bric-a-brac and waxy Madonnas, old copper etchings and works from Meisenberg's own brush were all strewn about the room on tables, etagères, consoles, and all over the walls, which moreover, like the floors, were covered in thick oriental carpets and faded embroidered silks, everything thrown together in clashing confusion, which, so to speak, pointed their fingers at themselves. Thomas Mann. Model number 4, French Realism. 42 pages describing the drapes. Marcel Proust. In my little pad was quite the scene. There were hand-knotted rugs from India and little Tibetan runners made from child hands in narrow spaces, a high-back French mahogany chase reupholstered with a rich flowery pattern of dark plum-like and mulberry colors, and a golden passion emblem embroidered dead center, a 24-lamp Schoenbach chandelier that was not Renaissance, though it claimed to be, sterling candelabras and fine crystal baubles and pieces and biomorphic art things, an end table from the Orient, but otherwise of mysterious origin. A replica of the dragon's chair, and a fantastically large print of the Arnolfini wedding hanging on the wall opposite my cherished mirror that conjured up thoughts of infinite recesses while securing my station in the ranks of the bon ton. For my own tastes, that is, not for the sake of society, I hung up several Francis Bacon prints torn from a book, unframed Scotch tape. There was other frippery and expensive litter and jewels strewn about the white carpet and surface areas. Of these, a miniature bronze chimera. How affected I was. I even replaced the refrigerator handle with a tricolored bone by Marcel Brudthayer's Memento Mori. Tom Styles would call my place garish, but I would call Tom Styles a know-nothing clod of modern culture. One of your contemporary men lacking in perception as he bides his time watching the latest out of Hollywood in his own naff and presently shabby chic quarters. If you were forced to guess, he would likely proffer that Brahms is some distant archipelago in the Pacific with a government antithetical to the American cause, and not one of the 3 Bs. Why is Mr. Styles such a staunch Faustian American? Who is he to, but so much for Mr. Styles, who keeps insisting on making cameos in my personal history? My darling Isabel has returned to the purview of my Kabbalistic post, and I'm getting along famously with a bottle of brandy in my tight pink getup, lusting irrepressibly for the shedding of silk, the spotting of a pinky toenail, a dribble of wet stuff at the corner of her mouth, even a shadow of movement, any kind of progress from beyond the glass. Model number 5, Gregor Goddard, the 2 Gs. Did he really want his warm room so comfortably fitted with old family furniture to be turned into a naked den in which he would certainly be able to crawl unhampered in all directions, but at the price of shedding simultaneously all recollection of his human background? Franz Kafka. Isabel descends a familiar staircase, freshly showered. She is wearing new nightwear, a darling little yellow chiffon pattern with here and there clusters of elfin red roses, and a left shoulder strap with a tear so tiny that only the most acute surveyor could spot the rift in the threads, and that surveyor is spelled M followed by E. The chiffon is a recent purchase. Her pink silk negligee went missing unaccountably, and I am wearing it now. The stitches nearly burst from the stress of my paunch. Her hair is longer than last autumn, and I do believe, yes, why, it is a touch lighter than the walnut brown I'd smelled and loved at times, and definitely lighter than the little lock I'd made with hair stolen from her bathroom comb. Her face is moist and fresh, her skin pale and milky, her fingers and toes recently painted. She is the precis of all celebrated female Shangri-La, and I, well, you are too kind to ask. I am at the secret window in medias res, looking on at the scene to the sounds of instruments that come on like a narcotic in my veins. I am Freuschitz. 2 balls remaining. You can laugh. It's okay to laugh. Too much? Not your style? Very well. I'm standing at the secret window, standing, one arm raised, stern and trapped affect overtaking me, such as was caught in Dubufay's Henri Michaud. I am that man, I am that man. Isabel, my darling Tootsie Wootsie, my sweetie pie, my sweet mama, my turtle dove, my little posy of calico, how I adore you still. Several cold autumn and winter months had passed since I had first established my situation on Flamingo Lane, since I had gone all in with my new arrangement. I had plenty of time to kill, and had even counted the number of uses of the word womb between Mailer and Miller in their books, 25,960. Not your average bunk lizard, am I? I'd made a habit of my new dwelling. My marriage suffered accordingly. The unfortunate Gringollade, known to many husbands and wives, had paid its respects to my nuptial, and the baleful effects of my obsession with my son's wife had worked violence on my dear Heather. If I did not love her, then I at least loved the idea of a solid marriage. But love is ridiculous. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. See, e.g., the binding of Isaac. The winter, that's what I was intent on talking about. There had been so many changes in the world. and yet I existed in a kind of static velvety tropic of Scorpio, a pit of sexual and alcoholic delirium, you might fairly say. I clapped for and adored the recent production of Isabel in November, Strophe, followed by its sequel, Isabel in December, Antistrophe. I continued to practice my sippings from the necks of bottles, and without the passive-aggressive looks and voice concerns of my now distant wife, there was no reason for me to deny my liver its due. I was in the townhome always, alone, short of breath, growing old, conquering love. I smoked my cigarellos and gulped gin to pass the hours and to quiet my jittery legs in the time between Isabel showings when the thoughts of self-disgust overwhelmed me. Alone, short of breath, growing old. Alone, short of breath, waiting for the strike of Bella oil, alcohol, dick pills, and pizza. No need to even ever go out of doors, just pay shipping and handling. And in the case of pizza, delivery is free. Blame all the bad thoughts on Henry Miller and Tanya, ex libris Goddard. It's not me, this is me, collecting the washed up shells of my daughter-in-law as the tide of each morning beached around my shore, where I would walk out into the wet sands a secret paramour. This is me, a wild beast loosed upon no one, a chimney monster, a low howler whose blood pumps at sick moments, a goddamned heartless sick bastard. This is me, a gawping wretch, as my mother would say, après moi, le deluge. But you needn't feel sorrow for this married bachelor. I ask for no one's pity. This is no salvation story, only the truth of my life, for any philanderer of book spines to plant his seed in with a wet finger. In contrast to the downward spiral of my marriage, the build up to the Christmas holiday was a source of shiny joys and chocolatey dreams, bright copper kettles and warm woolen feelings, a girl in pajamas beneath the same ceiling, wild nights that flew with the moon on their wings. These were a few of my favorite things. I dressed up the interior of the townhome, paid the Russians to deck the outside walls with pine garlands and lights, the big, bright, multicolored ones that are losing the war to light-emitting diodes. Those scoundrel Ruskies, what with their eyes for the loaves and fishes. How could I not invite them into the heated garage for a bumper of their favorite drink, V, and a plate of deli meats and another of cookies fresh from my Goddard electric oven? They were not permitted inside. Though they had constructed the mirror, it was not a conversation piece, and shame on you for thinking it was. When one of them leaned on the jag, I almost shot and killed the both of them. But it was Christmas, or nearing it. And while it was really only the half birthday of Jesus C, asked Luke, the thoughts of the little one in the manger surrounded by livestock and kings, and the perverts left out of the testament gave me pause from the lethal litigations that were popping up all over me like dandelions in a field. I wanted to kill and be killed. I wanted to fly above the clouds and drink a bottle of schnapps with old Saint Nick and his gilded sleigh and careen through the cold gases of the upper troposphere and hurl myself off the back of the flying carriage and shoot like a cannonball of skin through the clouds only to plummet face down into the black depths of the chimney, where I could brood and ogle at the tips of stockings that would dangle heavy with candied canes and sheltered fruits in front of my yellow eyeballs. Gary and Barbara committed the crime of having everyone over to their house for a giant feast, and I do mean a giant one, as I feasted on cuddly Bella like a jackal. It was shortly before the Christmas week. There had been a big snow that occupied a great deal of everyone's conversation, including the one I had with Barbara and the 10-minute wine-encrusted thrall in which I was held after the absorbing, enthusiastic, drunk woman took my coat and hat, woolpacker, and poured me out a glass from a bottle that she was apparently carrying around with her. Heather looked meanly at me, but I pushed her into Gary and he pulled her into the kitchen to meet his brother, who had missed the wedding due to business. I wasn't the oldest in the house, that was clear. There was a father on Barbara's side of the marriage who was seated in a parlor chair nibbling on the leg of a gingerbread man by the painted fireplace. He had Barbara's face. Because the bowls of punch and eggnog were placed on opposite sides of the poinsettia and foil on a dinette next to the old man, I skipped over at an opportune break in Barbara's exclamations and dipped the plastic punch scoop into the red sea of liquors and fruits and poured myself a glassful that I took like a shot. The plastic cups had a miniature teacup-like handle that I gripped with my fat pincer-like claw, and I drained glass after glass in a dipsomania-like frenzy in the warm-like, flame-like glow, and the old man left crumbs on his lip-like lip, and he saluted me in silence with a friend-like glimmer of repose. At that moment, I realized that I had forgotten my gun in the pocket of my coat, and I prayed to God that Barbara didn't kill herself by tossing the coat onto a bed. She reappeared down the stairs. There had been no shot, and I made myself known to the old man with the gingerbread breath, so as not to become reacquainted with Barbara's well-meaning though tedious holiday monologue. The old man was from Wisconsin. He was difficult to talk to because it was difficult for him to hear. He led a solitary life, though he did reveal a personality probably given to puns, but that is all I really learned from his dripping face, and so we smiled that friendly, twinkling smile that acknowledges the futility of carrying on. I replaced him with the punch bowl, from which I scooped 8 or 9 glasses before the call for table was made. Joy to the World, as performed live by Lori Line, was stuck in my head. I helped to carry the old man from his parlor chair to the place set table. There, a bunch of paper china was laid, a couple of baskets of fake plants had been recently dusted off, and 2 candlesticks reigned supreme, but they were for show only and would not be lighted. How strange the aversion of some families to candle lighting. There were other candles in the guest lavatory, the short votive kind that float in water in bowls. I lit those with a Bic lighter and filled the little garbage can under the sink with piss before returning to the table. I had not been raised in a household where Christmas was celebrated. Indeed, conceptual art held more prominence than Christ. And so I have always enjoyed the private pomp and circumstance fashioned by those households where holiday tradition dictated the minutest details down to the very recitation of scripture before bread and a little game after coffee, and where the memories of Christmas past are juggled between the passing of the plum, pudding, and water pitcher. Dinner was, in all actuality, quite splendid. Gary had done me the honor of placing me at a rounded corner of sorts at the end of the table, and the positioning placed Isabel's head and neck and frilled collar and vaginal suture in direct line with other guests, so that I could take her in, but also dart away to the other faces if need be the case. It was a delight to hear the crispness in her voice, as the sound I'd pick up through the walls in the townhome, even with my expensive machinery, were muffled and muted, and I could never truly discern the high frequency of voiceless consonants. To hear all the subtle inflections, the exactitude of a S sound, a sigh, a sniffle after wine, a slight moan when Walter rubbed her shoulder, these were an especial treat that I buried in my memory like a dog buries a bone in the yard. When it was time for gifts, I pretended surprise and gratitude for the red fleece jacket. In point of fact, I had watched as Walter wrapped the gift 2 nights previous. A great mound of paper and ribbons and gift bags and tape were erected in the center of the room, which was promptly stuffed into black garbage bags when the unwrapping of gifts came to a close. Following our rabid consumption of the material world, Barbara brought coffee around. She snapped her fingers in front of her father and brought the old man to life. The coffee was good, not great. It gave me a dash of energy that was most welcome. It was an early dinner, and everyone save for the old man had tickets for Lois Hulton's Nutcracker Fantasy, a Gary and Barbara tradition. I did not plan on sitting through that appearance in any state other than utterly and completely and devastatingly mind-blowing hammered off the best liquid on earth. I didn't care if I pissed my pants, if I tackled an old woman, if I screamed up the contents of dinner and thrust them at the stage, if I fired rounds into the ceiling of the State Theater entr'acte and was dragged off to the cling for reckless discharge, if I atomized Bella's entrails and made a honey and wine reduction of the particulate matter that I would pour over a salad and consume in a public park where the screams of car horns and children and bike bells covered up the crunching between my molars. The mood between Heather and I did not suddenly grow better when we were alone in the mudroom prior to leaving. She was adamant that I could not drive, and I was adamant and kind that I was perfectly capable of dying in a blaze of fire and mangled metal. She wanted the keys, and when she threatened to raise her voice and cause a scene, something I fear more than heart attack, I had to proffer the fob to my car and allow her to drive. We walked to my car together. After she had got in, she repositioned the electric seat and mirrors, which nearly caused me to cry. But I maintained my composure and made a deep guttural groaning that she was free to interpret as fatigue. She smelled of a perfume that Gary and Barbara had gifted her that night, and the noxious odor quickly overwhelmed the cabin and pounded on my temples like Attila at the gates. I cracked the window and my wife complained. My wife complained about everything in those days. She complained about my very fingernails, saying nothing of those things I did that actually warranted the redressing of grievances that rolled like lava out of her fat face. She was driving my Jag. I hated it. I mean, I really could not stand for it. And I just stared at her, tried to stare her to death, gave her the dog eye with the utmost fury, and she finally noticed. And when she noticed that and the pistol I was pointing at her cheery gut, and when she understood full well the consummate urgency in my voice when I told her to pull over and switch seats, and when I drove the end of the barrel into the place where a 59-year-old gallbladder was hiding beneath a blanket of fatty tissue, when I did these things, she did pull over and switch seats, and she began to sob and asked what happened to us and what's happened to you. And I just cranked that motherfucking Verity up to the upper limits of the meridian system. And that scared the perfume off her. And she couldn't even hear me laughing, which was too bad. Really, it was too bad that she could not, for the first time, hear the devil in her husband's lungs. We made it to the State Theater in one piece. We both put on smiles. That's it.
God
What the fuck
damn.
was that? It's fucking ass.
Oh, Wait, let's get. I don't know. I'm not sure if he was cheering you on or trolling. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. But oh my God, that was. Every time I hear Goddard, I'm fucking blown away, and I need to sit down and read it. But first, I actually have to send it back to Jesse so that he can take notes on it, and then send it back to me. But that aside, no, holy shit though. Like I've talked before about like how like wonderfully like perverse and lavish the prose is, right? But I love all the like metafictional elements you've worked in here, like the different descriptions of different rooms from different pieces of literature, and how you're like revealing your sources in a really, or your inspirations even, in a really fascinating way that makes them feel like part of the psyche of the character as opposed to like an affectation of the artist, right? We're getting more deeper and deeper into this guy's psyche, and Dostoevsky
Okay, fucking nerd.
and man just happened to be a part of that. Sorry, I don't know what that guy was saying, but he's gone now because he interrupted me. Anyway, Adam, it's fun, and the ending here, the way this piece like builds to like a literal crescendo, right, is fucking so good. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for listening.
I don't know if we had a heckler or if I just kicked out somebody who wanted to contribute something, but
Was it? I think that someone called me a fucking nerd, or you and
Yeah, he was talking shit.
Yeah, it was a heckler. It was a bullshit. Yeah.
oh damn, what a shame.
I kind of wonder what would happen one day if like someone was just after the reading finished, like that was shit. And it was like, but it wasn't a heckler. It was just like real.
Somebody, well, Josh isn't here tonight, so it's probably not going to happen tonight. So thank you so much, Adam. That was fantastic as usual. And people were losing their fucking heads in the chat. So you might want to check that out. But Blick is up next.
That's fucking great. Thank you. Thank you. What a Christmas gift. Following that. All right. Yeah, I like Christmas, not that baby Jesus Christmas. I think that's too S&M with the everybody's shouting for this baby to be born 3 months later. It's tortured and brutally murdered. And so that's, but my sacred texts are Dickens, and Oscar Wilde wrote a great Christmas novel called Mr. Ives' Christmas. So the story I'm going to read is an old story it comes from a short story collection I published, Redhead Press, 15, 16 years ago. And I checked, and it was published online. So you have the link. You have the link on it on there. And for some reason, this year it got some legs. It was put into this anthology. It's a pretty nice anthology. Just the Season, A Christmas Guide Toward Survival. And also, Syracuse University has a publication for and about disabled people called Word Gathering. So they're gonna, it's a long story. It's like 4,000 words. We're gonna read it. But they did two, they're gonna serialize it in 2 installments. So I figured I would just read the first installment that they're gonna put down, all right? So this is called A Christmas Tale for the Disenchanted. I can't believe I'm following that. Anyway, so it was more like a Sunday school lesson. We just go from James Joyce to Jesus Loves Me, Yes I Know. All right. A Christmas Tale for the Disenchanted. It was a December 24th, unlike any December 24th in recent memory. The ground was blanketed with ice from a snowfall 2 days earlier, and it was quite cold. They even predicted more snow by nightfall. Imagine that, a cold and snowy Christmas Eve, just like the old snapshots in the family album. What a relief. Maybe this year's holiday conversation wouldn't center around how pollution and its ensuing global warming trends conspired to take the feel out of Christmas. These thoughts flashed inside Maura's head as she and Jode slowly made their way up Fairview Avenue in Jersey City. Maura liked the crisp smell of the cold air, but the ice frightened her. She hoped her fear wouldn't be transmitted to Jode. She tried to relax her grip on him. When they reached the corner, Maura leaned over and patted Jode's head. The dog barely felt his master's affection. The ice and traffic were making him too nervous to cross the street. Crossing streets was once an easy feat for Joe, but now he hated it. He's hated it for several years. They stood on the corner of Fairview Avenue through two complete traffic light changes, waiting for Joe's decision. Each time Maura heard the traffic stop and felt people next to her cross the street, she directed Joe to move forward. He refused. The dog could feel Maura's impatience as she fidgeted with his harness. Joe was breathing heavily when he finally took his first step. Maybe the cold steam from his breath obscured his vision, or maybe it was his owner's anxiety that clouded his judgment. Nevertheless, he proceeded to lead Maura into the street. She smelled the first hint of danger, a blast of diesel fuel. "Stop, stop!" shouted pedestrians from both sides of the street. Maura yanked back on Joe's harness and froze. A turning bus cut right in front of her, missing them by inches. Maura's abrupt stop caused her to lose her footing on the slippery pavement. Down she went. Joe's tail drooped between his legs, and he lowered his head as a rush of people came to Maura's aid. As they helped her to her feet, she heard a man say, "What's wrong with that stupid dog?" "It was my fault, not the dog," said Maura. She patted Joe on the shoulder and thanked the people for helping her. Joe's tail remained folded underneath him as they cautiously made their way to the sidewalk. If Maura could see, she'd know that a dog's tail was usually tucked away. He worried so much of the time about his safety. It had been ages since he was able to wag it in joy or relief. The block just ahead of Maura and Joe was one of the most treacherous in the city. It was lined with abandoned, burned out buildings. This meant no one had cleared away any of the snow. It was ignored. The entire length of the block was one shiny sheet of thick, slick ice. Other pedestrians simply avoided this dangerous stretch of sidewalk by crossing the street. Maura knew nothing of the peril she was approaching, but Joe knew. He could see how crowded it was across the street. It made him shiver to realize that he and his master were completely alone. Not one soul was nearby. If something should happen, Joe knew there would be no one around to help Maura this time. To steady her footing on the sidewalk, Maura took short, heavy steps that crunched into the ice. She believed that these crunching sounds was the ice screaming out in pain as her boots cracked its spine. "I'm sorry," Maura whispered to the pavement. Joe, who was much lower to the ground, knew the ice couldn't hear her apology above her crackling footsteps. At the beginning of her blindness, Maura thought that her hearing had and would become more potent. But as she matured, she understood that her ears hadn't grown more powerful, only her concentration. And as her concentration grew, so did her imagination. She enjoyed making up stories based on sounds, especially the sounds of nature. Without visual distraction, the sounds became pieces of puzzles whose final outcome would be dictated by her tastes and moods. Maura totally disregarded where or how they had originated. And if these sounds produced paintings in her mind, then wind was her favorite color. A delicious intimacy flourished between Maura and the wind. Sometimes it whistled at her or tried to seduce her with soft spring breezes. Other times she'd capture and cage it, like on a hot summer day, when she'd pull out her electric fan and force the wind to serve her. Maura would listen to the breeze spew out between the thin bars that protected her from the rotary, begging to be released from this unnatural act. More often than not, she'd take pity on this artificial breeze. A finger would click off the fan and she'd sit in her hot apartment, sweaty but satisfied. Winter winds were fickle. Many people thought of winter winds as bitter, but Maura knew better. They weren't bitter, just mischievous and protective. Its mischief could be seen in the formation of ice. The wind and water loved playing together during winter because nothing delighted more than to be turned into ice. Maura appreciated how water was always at work, replenishing, refreshing, and cleaning. Yet despite this terrific workload, it disturbed her that the only time water seemed to be acknowledged was when it was cursed during droughts, vilified as acid rain, or slandered when it could no longer carry away the foul-smelling waste dumped into it. During winter rainstorms or snow sprinklings, Maura would listen to the drops of moisture, beg for a decrease in the temperature so it could freeze over. The wind, who was quite sophisticated because of its intensive travels, understood the water's need to develop a thick protective skin against the criticism people threw at it. And if that skin was an exquisite icicle or slippery patch of ice, so be it. The dog hesitated as Maura urged him forward, but what could he do? There was absolutely no way of avoiding that terrible stretch of ice. He thought of directing Maura into the street in order to bypass her, but that was too dangerous. The traffic was too heavy. He tried to get Maura to cross the street to safety, but she didn't understand his nudging. "Come on, Joe, stop acting so silly. Why do you want to cross the street? You know Uncle Charlie's building is on this side of the block. Don't let that bus scare you. We are not in any danger. It's just a sidewalk. Let's go." Joe tread lightly on his paws, but it made no difference. The thoroughness with which Maura, at a necessity, crunched the ice in her path cannot be ignored. The ice's crackling anguish caught the wind's attention. Maura heard a bellow, then felt a violent gust of air drop down on her. It raked across her face like a sharp pair of scissors. She felt certain she had frostbite. The wind then swerved off to the left, gathering up chunks of ice that had hurled against Maura and Joe like exploding bits of shrapnel. "Stop it, please," Maura called out. "It's not my fault." But the wind simply absorbed her words into its increasing roar. Joe knew Maura couldn't stand up to this barrage much longer, and if she fell, the wind and the ice would surely do her serious harm. So the dog began to dig furiously with his claws. His old legs ached as they tore at the ice until he had broken through to the pavement. Joe then lifted his head and howled so mightily that the wind had to take notice. He returned to his digging until a bald spot appeared on the ground, free of ice. Then the dog howled again at the wind, threatening to make the bald spot even larger if it did not stop its attack. The wind died down. Maura was stung by the cold, but she understood why the wind had retreated. Joe had rescued her. Uncle Charlie's apartment building was just on the corner, so she quickened her pace. Joe limped along on his torn and frozen front paws, trying to keep up. When they entered the building, Maura crouched by Joe. "Are you okay, boy?" Joe licked her face as her fingers deftly examined him. When she touched his raw paws, she gasped. Once inside her uncle's apartment, she insisted he give her warm towels to wrap around Joe's bruises. The Christmas party was pretty much like all the other holiday parties she attended there for the past 4 years. Maura would sit in an overstuffed chair by the living room window with Joe stretched out across her ankles. "That's a beautiful Labrador retriever," said a woman with a smoker's husky voice. "Yes, he is, and he's very bright too," replied Maura. An uncomfortable silence followed until Maura heard, "It's a lovely Christmas ribbon you've threaded around his collar." "Yes, he seems to enjoy it." "Can I get you anything to drink, Maura?" "You are Maura, Charlie's niece." Maura giggled. "How'd you recognize me? Did Uncle Charlie complain that I wear the same old Christmas outfit every year?" Maura heard the sizzle of a struck match as the woman nervously lighted a cigarette. She did not want to make the woman uneasy. It was so tiresome to have sighted people take everything she said so seriously. If someone at the party were to ask her what she wanted for Christmas, Maura would answer it would be a sign she could hang off her back that would read, "Beware, blind person with a sense of humor." "Thank you for offering me a drink," said Maura, "but I'm not thirsty. I would appreciate if you can get Joel a bowl of water." Maura liked being by the window because it was always drafty. She enjoyed listening to the wind force its way inside. It would make gurgling sounds as it delighted in sneaking a chill into the warm and cozy room. The warmth felt wonderful to Joe, but he was too nervous to really enjoy it. All he could think about was the trip home. He'd have to lead Maura through that minefield of ice and wind and do a better job of it this time. And those traffic lights, red and green, green and red. Even though he was colorblind, he knew they were Christmas colors. Uncle Charlie's girlfriend played his piano as all the guests joined in the singing. Maura disliked her voice, so she silently mouthed the words. Everyone laughed when Joe yelped to the final chorus of Little Drummer Boy. "Maura, is Joe being critical of our singing, or has he been overtaken by the Christmas spirit?" asked Uncle Charlie. "I think he's just anxious to chew on that drumstick we're all praising," grinned Maura. "At his age?" Maura frowned and did not answer her uncle. "How old is your dog?" asked a male voice Maura couldn't identify. 13. "I hope I like that good when I'm, let me see, 13 times 7, when I'm 91. He's 13, not 91, replied Maura. When everyone retired to the living room to play a board game, Maura declined the invitation to join in. She preferred to sit in her chair stroking Joe. Maura enjoyed listening to the clicking of dice as it passed from hand to hand, but she loved those fraction of a second silences after the dice cleared the player's fingers before they hit the board. Anything was possible during that brief pause, that split second before good news or bad news bounced on the cardboard. Believing in possibility was Maura's favorite Christmas activity. During the 11 and a half years since Joe came into her life, she established a secret Christmas Eve ritual based on an ancient legend and a lot of hope. Maura had to be home before midnight. "What time is it, Uncle Charlie?" Her uncle looked at his watch. 11:20. "My God, I have to go." Uncle Charlie grinned and shook his head. "This is where my niece turns into Cinderella. She has to return home before the clock strikes 12. "I must leave, I'm sorry." "I'm the one who's sorry," said Uncle Charlie. "You never stay to help us trim the tree. I only wine and dine my guests so I can turn you all into my personal labor force." Everyone laughed except Maura. It was getting late. "I don't want to be rude, Uncle Charlie, but I have no choice." Uncle Charlie hugged his niece. I'll give you a lift home. Jode's ears perked up and he barked his approval. Although Maura wanted to accept her uncle's offer to drive her home, she was afraid it might offend Jode. That's all right. Don't bother. Jode and I can make it home fine. The dog's ears drooped. It's snowing pretty hard out there, said Uncle Charlie. That's all the more reason why you shouldn't have to move your car. Waiting in the lobby as Maura pulled on her gloves, Jode watched a sweetly scented woman enter the building and begin pinching snowflakes off her fur coat. The dog shuddered. All right, so that's just the end. That's the end of part one.
Fantastic, man. That was great.
I really dig what you've done here with perspective. So first of all, I like the way that you're playing with some of the like Christmas tropes though, like even like things like the personification of the wind and the seasons and the dog that has like, a sense of real consciousness and purpose. Like these all remind me of like children's Christmas movies, but the like pathos here is so above and beyond what's there, right? And generally, like in a story like this, in the children's version, the dog would be like eager to serve and not like racked with anxiety. But I can only imagine like how incredibly fucking stressful that role might be, right? Having that like level of responsibility for another life. Of course he'd be fucking full of stress and anxiety all the time. And I really dig that. I really dig like the ways you've like taken the traditional like Christmas special narrative and subverted it and undermined it here.
When I was living in Colombia, when I was a really young guy, I did an essay about bullfighting here a few months ago. There was a legend that I don't know if anybody's heard of it, or if it's even in the United States, but there's a legend that at midnight animals can speak. Has anybody heard that? Is that also in the United States, or I only heard it in Colombia?
Yeah, this is a weird fucking coincidence because literally every New Year's Eve, my mom had this little like children's storybook, and it was about exactly that. And she would read that to us. It was like a retelling of the nativity story from the animal's perspective. And it worked in like the sense that like at midnight on Christmas Eve, the animals could speak. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
I've definitely heard it anyway.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh. All right, well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Blick.
But no thank you for having me follow Adam, all right? No thanks for that at all. So I gave somebody a gift. There's a bridge there. Somebody could take a pause, take a shit, and then we can resume normalities. Yeah? Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, Blick.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Gianluca's up next.
All right, hey everybody, what's up? Okay, I'm up next. Yeah, I'm gonna say I don't know. This might not really be like most of my stuff. I think is very different. It was an experiment with AI, but also it was my attempt at like a parody. Well, maybe not even a parody, but like my take on the splattercore or torture porn genre, just because something like Saw or something like that. I don't know. I was looking at this, Reddit, and there's this disturbing book, Iceberg, and I was reading some of the books at the bottom of the iceberg, and I was thinking, I don't know. I guess for me, sometimes I just felt like, but I think I may suffer from the same problem here. I just felt some of it was very perfunctory, kind of just like, just it didn't really get into much. I don't know. Anyway, I apologize. Never mind. Anyway, I'm very vague. Let me just read the actual thing. So yeah, it's an AI experiment, an experiment in genre, but I don't know. Who knows if it works? Okay, sorry. Le Chantier Naval Blanc. And so Alphonse went to sleep next to the skinned man, and the skinned man began to caress his body. Alphonse's body had been sculpted through a mix of plastic surgery, liposuction, strange circumstances, and obsessive pursuance of the godhood physique. Alphonse began to have a fairly strange dream. The skinned man got out of bed, took his clothes off, turned the water of the shower on, went in the bathroom, and sat in the toilet. Nothing out of the ordinary. It was just Mr. Skinhead taking out his waterworks. And then Alphonse woke up and discovered that something which had just happened seemed awfully familiar all of a sudden. It was the way Mr. Skinhead moved his hands as he sat on the can. For one thing in particular, Alphonse recognized the way the way Mr. Skinhead held his hands while he sounded the crapper was exactly identical. No variations in execution, not just an imagined similarity. The very same gestures, and they were performed by the very same man. Alphonse thought about asking him if they were one and the same, that is, one consciousness split across two bodies, like in the movies. Instead, for varying reasons, one has to think that Alphonse got to feeling a bit disgusted and freaked out and never spoke up about it. But there were other things as well as this incident that Alphonse began to think about, even though they had nothing to do with one another in any way. A strange tooth had been delivered to him in the mail today, 2 weeks prior. The tooth was coming out of the mouth of some young fellow. The owner of the tooth could be seen in the background of a photograph or framed canvas. He reminded Alphonse of the skinned man, only he didn't have any skin, as a matter of fact. The photograph was of a young handsome twat by the name of Rufus Morrison. Instructions in the package were that Alphonse would take the skin of one or both arms, no skin on either, as well as 6 inches off his waistline. Alphonse weighed 202 pounds. Peel it off entirely and replace all with a picture of Rufus using surgical precision, and then legally his possession of the tooth would be made valid. Alphonse did not want to hang the picture and display it around his house, so he put it in a bag many times, a bag of flour, ate the cookie dough that resulted from its efforts. It didn't taste good, but no matter how many times he bit into this dough or any other sample area within several pounds vicinity whose built-up gut had been recently replaced with healthier, sturdier body mass through exercise as well as strange herbs to do on your own at home. Yet he still noticed the stares from the young man he knew from the country club. Was he perchance asking him to torture a young girl with him? Was he some homosexual? Who knew? All Alphonse knew was that this kid was weird. He ruminated on the photo of this fellow, Rufus, with his badly drawn rocks behind idolizing eyes. It was beneath him. Sometimes he would stretch little segments of skin onto a piece of toast and butter. He once read a satire of a so-called godless liberal society where people ate fetuses on toast, so he tried it himself, and sometime after, the Beatles began to say words that were not colors. Then Alphonse thought to make another sample in a cup like the day he made hot cocoa out of water that week, when it was pouring rain heavily or snowing hard, though no wind cut through him sensually. Old Alphonse was knocking on a stained glass window, but Alphonse ignored him. An old fool from the future trapped in a Catholic nursing home to have his cells fed on. Alphonse knew that he would never become that old man. He bitched at Alphonse nonstop, and all he could do was take it like a man. But the only thing was that it wasn't like Hostel 3 by Scott Spiegel, where there were cool tattoos. There were only effeminate pink key cards, and Alphonse thought the other partners looked pretty stupid. Maybe partnering with that kid from the country club wouldn't be so bad, he thought to himself. He spied the young twat still sitting down, and then he started to stare, and this other young fellow was always smiling because, after all, he knows the movie script, and there is no line to deliver if thine bounty be but written for all eternity. Albert was thinking how hot it must be in there, and the cooks were on strike calling for a salary raise. They were trapped in the hot area below the diners, sweating, with red, thick skin. Their eyes kind of bulged out like the antagonist at the end of Total Recall. Alphonse thought it was rather funny. As the minutes went by, he felt guilt opening up in his chest like a great wound. Rather, it was as if his lungs were swelling. If only he hadn't fucked that hoe and sired a bastard child. Now it wasn't quite time to sit down, and then the world would lay still, and the clocks displayed their triangles thusly. Alphonse was a big fan of the children's television show Steven Universe. There were many animated characters in the show, but 2 of them stood out to him the most: Lapis Lazuli and Peridot. Lapis had been trapped in a mirror for centuries before she made it to Earth, and during that time of solitude and reflection, she reacted poorly. Alphonse had drawn a lot of erotic fan art of her and felt a great romantic connection to her. He would belong to no other woman. However, this claim is parodied by his crush on Peridot, who Alphonse thinks of as being a stupid pervert obsessed with Earth. Yes, Alphonse liked the based bitches and the hoes. Together they made the yin and the yang, and also the ho and the quo, according to Jonathan Bowden, the fascist philosopher which Alphonse was obsessed with. Alphonse notes that he had failed to complete Simon Pegg's filmography, leaving out leaving out only hot fuzz. However, he hoped he would be able to catch it on his next outing to the lodge, as they had television next to the torture room. As soon as he got out of the car and walked toward the door, the security guard seemed glad to see him, and this pleasure somehow seemed very fake. Alphonse sneered at this display of false merriment. The security guard gave him the hall pass with an L on it, denoting his card level. "Take no L's," he muttered to himself. Alphonse then woke up. "Get your filthy hands off of my torso," he said, pushing the skinned man's hands away. "Gosh," said the skinned man in response, "so sensitive. Is Mr. Skinhead still on the toilet?" asked Alphonse. "Of course, why wouldn't he be?" replied the skinned man. Alphonse then wiped the blood off his body. "I am a fucking Greek statue. I am literal fucking classical perfection. I am the image of God refracted through the mind of a genius. I am a king. Every day people look up to me and they tell me how good they've been, and I listen. I am the king of the divine. I am the plastic airplane. I am the sing of the reflection. I am that which dreams the truth, and my memories are immaterial. I will pass the lie detector test, and there's no reason to deny the inevitability of my vision," he whispered to himself as he flapped his hands and gyrated his wrists. "Your boy's in the other room. Where did the girl come from?" said the skinned man. "She appears to have been a sex worker," Alphonse responded. "Jesus, really going for the easy targets, huh? No reason to make this more difficult for ourselves. You know what I think? I don't even think you're a real sadist. I think you're just a pussy. There's no passion to your torture. You're a silly little man. You could have tortured a politician's daughter, but instead you have volunteered to torture to death a woman from a class of people already subject to torture on a daily basis. To a young girl, unused to physical pain would have been more moral, more interesting, certainly. You're just not compelling, Alphonse. I say that as someone who is simply observing you beyond your fascination with little cartoon girls. You have nothing to say about anything. I remember meeting Ghislaine Maxwell at a party. I don't know what to say to her. I didn't know what to say to her, so I brought up my crypto portfolio in an attempt to impress her. Did you know that I managed to perfectly ride the Dogecoin boom? I was the one that introduced her to Monero, too. You know, she's a big fan of that TV show, Succession. All you can do is speak in cliches, my good man. The spiritually dead socialite is just this archetype that you project upon me. You assume that I am unhappy, when in reality such an assumption is based on a mixture of jealousy and psychological projection. No wonder you think I'm one-dimensional. If we only meet when I'm torturing. What did she use the Monero for, Alphonse? I'm sure she had ways of shifting money about in secret before. I'm sure I had minimal material effect in terms of children raped. The skinned man laughed. You know, that thing with the skin, it's hereditary. Each child of that family eventually becomes something like that. And the tooth? Why do you want it so badly? He said. How do you know about the tooth? Irrelevant. What's so important about it? It has a certain carving on it. I want to keep it so I can look at the carving whenever I want. What is that carving? None of your business. You know that guy who did the toolbox murders? The victims of his torture were allowed to take breaks to watch TV, right? There's a TV room right there, right here. And I guess you guys take breaks, but with the torture here being so quick and dirty, the victims aren't allowed to take a break to watch TV. I wonder what kind of TV you watch when you've been violated in such a way, you know? When someone who is more of an ape than man hovers over you, a protruding snout, big eyes, what kind of stuff do you want to see? Shaking profusely, cuts and bruises, cream lingerie, yeah. I'm not some kind of pervert. I'm not some sexual sicko like that guy. It's pure sadism on our end, pure sadism. There's no need to bring that fuck into it. Besides, we can't risk them breaking out in any way. What if they steal a key card or some shit? No, it wouldn't be practical to offer TV breaks. For sure. You know, there's this one channel that broadcasts nothing but Max Fleischer. You know, nothing but old Fleischer tunes. And I wonder who watches it consistently. Because eventually you got to get bored of watching the same thing over and over, right? But somebody's got to keep watching that stuff. I like the one where Bimbo gets initiated into this cult, but at the end it turns out all the members were Betty Boop. That was funny, you know? Because Bimbo's got to be some kind of member having intercourse with all those Bettys. And I wonder what that's like. You ever been to any one of those Eyes Wide Shut parties? No, I don't have energy for those type of things. I like to keep things one-on-one, you know? I like to having sex with someone I know, but honestly, the only people I know are Lapis and Peridot, and maybe this kid from the country club, and that boy that got his tooth stolen and his skin repurposed into a ritual where he shall become a sign relating to what once was. I know him indirectly, sure. Would you say your torture is influenced by some disadvantaged upbringing? Bullies got you down or something? Some kids didn't like me, I guess, but I bear no ill will toward them. Considering my behavior at the time, I believe I deserved what I got. So yeah, I think that's a common subversion, right? Like to show the inherent ugliness or pointlessness of violence. The hero asks the villain why the villain is doing this, and it turns out there's no justification. And the audience is secure in the knowledge the story is about the failure to rationalize or rehabilitate evil. I don't know about that. Maybe I was born in this way. Maybe there's some kind of psychological factor, but at the end of the day, the presence of a reason for all this doesn't really mean much, does it? The sex worker will still be cut up and at the bottom of some landfill, whether I am a metaphor for the banal inscrutability of evil or a tragic example of a potentially good man psychologically broken by an unjust society. The motivation isn't non-existent. It's just meaningless. Alphonse then turned and walked into through the door into the torture room. The skinned man stretched his legs out onto the couch and wiggled his toes. The poor bastard, the poor bastard. He really thinks that all that speechifying meant something. He has no technique. He has no rigor. He's not even all that smart, he said to himself. The kid from the country club was blonde and had an emaciated twink figure. His arms were like reinforced pipe cleaners. He had pepperoni nipples. You could see his ribs poking out over the slightly concave stomach. He had an overbite and braces. His finger bones were gently rubbing against the surface of a scalpel, and the sex worker was screaming against the gag. Her arms were positioned away from her horizontally, while her legs were kept together, her body made to match the cruciform shape of the table. Surely she should also have a crown of thorns, asked Alphonse. Jesus once defended a cheap hoe. Hoes are the friends of Jesus Christ, replied the kid. So you think she should have gotten stoned? None of us are without sin, but we forsake such a truth so that we may enforce the rules. Some sins matter more than others. Of course, how grave is the sin of being a hoe? Not that grave to my mind. Nothing wrong with giving people a little pleasure. Well, if it's the wrong people, then it is they who commit the sin of belonging to that particular group, right? Servicing evil is adjacent to committing it. And so the evil ones are so because they pursue the services of hoes? Sure, and I guess that's circular, right? Yeah, but think about it. They could be pursuing wives, but instead they utilize women's bodies for glorified masturbation. If you pursue a woman, you should do it because of her person, I suppose. You don't sound convinced. I just don't think sex is as meaningful as you say. Aren't we using a woman's body for our amusement right now? Sure, but that's different. How so? Because we are not spilling our seed. So Jesus was wrong. The strong must prevail over the weak. The first will not, in fact, be the last. As Ayn Rand once said, A is A. That I agree with. The strong, in a sense, are a wider community that I find myself indebted to. However, I have no debt to the weak. It is not true that degenerates such as I lead empty lives. I have a family that I am indebted to. I have so many things to be grateful for. If anything, my relation to the community is stronger than otherwise, due to it being smaller in scope. If a man has community, he can justify anything. One can have no debt to the weak, for we are the ones who lend the money. Indeed. The kid reached the metal tray and retrieved the electric carving knife. This probably can't cut through bone, right? No, try tracing it along the stomach. The kid took Alphonse's advice, rotating the knife until the blade turned downward and lightly puncturing the stomach's skin. The woman's head jolted up in response to this, but was forced back down due to the relation of her back to the table. He turned the carving knife on and began to cut through the flesh. There was a lot of screaming. He drew a little loop-to-loop. Alphonse picked at the skin flaps. He got blood on his fingernails. Maybe we can put this rodent up our butt, said the kid, unlocking the cage. Alphonse looked at the woman. Her breath was heavy. No way are we going to be able to untie and retie those restraints. They're only going off once, he observed. Oh, yeah. So I guess there's only one place it could possibly go. Up. Like that Eminem song. That was a hamster. And actually it was up Eminem's butt. The hamster got lost up there. Did the hamster have fun in Marshall Mathers' butt? Probably not. I wonder if it died up there, and he had to excrete it back out. Maybe the walls of the anus would constrict a little too soon, dicing up the feces-covered hamster corpse. The kid rubbed his nose. You're really silly, he whispered in the sex worker's ear. She whimpered in response. Alphonse stuffed the rat into the sex worker's genitalia. This is so cool, said the kid, awestruck. You're really stupid, said Alphonse. You're really stupid, you know that? The kid walked over to the sound system and put 303's Streets of Gold into the CD player. He started dancing. After dancing for a couple songs, he inquired as to whether sex worker was all right, as she had been passed out for a while. Alphonse checked her pulse. There was no heartbeat. Sorry, man, said Alphonse dejectedly. I know this should have been a fun day. I guess we just got overeager. I'm whatever, said the kid. I'm just glad I got to spend time with you. I'm sorry, he whispered to the corpse's ear. At the bottom of the landfill was the body of a woman abandoned by her family and supported by a very small and impotent social circle. Alphonse and the kid didn't know that, of course. The moonlight, it takes you away. You know, they took out my brain once and used it as evidence in a court case, said Alphonse to the kid. You called me stupid. Why? Asked the kid. Simple. You were easily impressed by crude spectacle. Did you feel sorry for her? No, of course not. Don't be silly. You're being a silly Billy, my boy. I didn't feel anything. I said sorry to her because I guess I felt obligated to. She died so soon, you know, and she had a rodent up her snatch. Even if she were dead, her family wouldn't like that. No, my mom would be really sad if my corpse had a rodent up its butt. Ah, Rufus, the tooth with an 11-year-old girl's face carved on it. In minute detail, it's like someone carved it into a wall of ivory, but shrunk it to the size of a tooth. The moon takes you away, so maybe the hoe will sleep soundly tonight. She bled out,
screaming on an operating table. There can be nothing of beauty in such a death. Only the moralist monk shot by a soldier, or the deranged salaryman immolating himself, can delude himself into thinking that the end of the consciousness can constitute a victory. I disagree. It's all over for her. So what? She's free. Free from, perhaps, but certainly not free too. Besides, she may have even enjoyed it. The prostitution, that is. No woman enjoys that kind of thing. You don't know that. Of course you'd think that. You're a pedo who's obsessed with some little girl and a tooth. This girl is everything to me in a sense. She seems to have a logical answer to the question of whether she should continue. She is positive yet mature. I think she'll be taken away by the moonlight, because if a devil laser can hold so many souls, then the moon can hold 1 billion. And she will be able to talk to all the other hoes that have been murdered by sick men like us. The moon can't do that, kid. The moon is a piece of rock. She was just as much a machine as you or I, and now that television is broken, it is turned to static, and there is no information in her eyes. The kid turned to Alphonse and smirked. I bet the skinned man would make fun of you if he were here. Here to see this, he said. The skinned man is a bloody idiot, Alphonse said in return. Alphonse had carried the tooth with him in an obscure backpack pocket. He surveyed the landscape. They'll be coming soon, he said. They wouldn't be able to resist, but the Northmen aren't too bright about these woods. We'll be safe, though. Anyway, you never know with those blokes. Could be a total disaster. My Aunt Beatrice came on holiday with a bunch of them once, and she's never been the same since. She's working as a sumo wrestler now. She means well, but I'm sure the skinned man would have very interesting words on all this, David said. Shut it, lad, Alphonse said. They hid behind a tree and waited. He'll be coming for you, all right, Alphonse said. Who is this bloody David bloke, anyway? Asked the kid. He's one of those psychologists who thinks aliens might have brought the sun back, Alphonse said. And? Asked the kid. Well, he's probably right about that, Alphonse admitted. I'm afraid it'll be a long story, but you didn't get it from me, understand? Uh-huh, the kid said. Walked right into that one. He's an alien? Is there a chance he is? Alphonse asked. The kid looked at him. He blushed a bit and looked away. Aye, Alphonse, he said. Suddenly, Alphonse turned into a woman. The kid opened his mouth and shut it. No, he's not really an alien, Alphonse said. Just a normal type, like the hairless man. Tears came up in Chansey's eyes. I never got the name of my father. It was a tough life for me, he said. When I was 14, an American came up and murdered my grandpa. After that, I could never forgive the communists or the Satanists. When he finished telling me this, tears were in his eyes. I asked him, who is this Satanist? I want to kill him. I want to kill him so badly, Chansey said, his pathetic old limbs shaking impotently. Chansey's lungs then began to inflate. They got larger and longer than would have ever been possible for human beings, not just in their inflation rate, but also by their volume. I was staring at trees and bouncing orange leaves like ping-pong balls as Chansey shouted, you leave this planet at once. We will come with your artificial wind that began the change of centuries. Suddenly, I saw that my friends looked like blue people. It's a bit strange, being a woman, said Alphonse. I'm still attracted to you, said the kid. That's good to know. David had wandered off. He'll probably be dead very soon. With those blue people about, it's important to stay in groups. Ah, well, his loss, commented Alphonse. I wish we saved her arm. Would be pretty twisted if we ate her, right? Yeah, but human flesh doesn't taste too good. I wouldn't want to do it, and besides, we'd probably need to shave the arm completely, just to ensure there were no hairs whatsoever. Better to wax and tear that shit out by the root. Good point. Still sounds like a lot of effort for a little gain. For sure, I suppose it would go just cap things off, right? I suppose so. But with whom would it give us cred? I guess it would just be something we did out of pure passion. Sounds silly, I suppose. The two walked back to the car. I can't believe I'm a chick, said Alphonse as she opened the car door. It's not that bad, surely. Yeah, but how am I going to explain this to Dad? You're going to change your pronouns and profile picture on Twitter? Maybe. The two drove to a KFC. Just chicken fillets for me, said the kid. Sure thing, Alphonse replied. What's it like being a woman? I mean, you're not a hoe, right? You're not like the chick we tortured. No, you're beautiful. Your presence befits that of a strong woman, and strong women don't get tortured, you feel me? Yes, you're good in something. No, you're not taken away by the moonlight or consumed by rats, so there's no need to be sad. I guess it feels pretty strange. I have breasts and no dick. I'm ambivalent to that in a sense. I'm not a blue person. I'm not even a shade of blue if you think about it. Tiresias popped her balloons, but I gained them. It feels good. I have a sense of agency. I hate myself less. It would feel good to torture in this body, yes, but I also don't know why. There is no why. Only the bodies and the cream that floats to the top of the Starbucks coffee. Perhaps you're right. I hope I'm right. Humpkin, Huggy Bunny, Smoochkins, Love Drug, Whore Mother, Snatch a Grab, Lord of Something, Pain and Beauty, Told to be a Screwdriver. Alphonse changed her pronouns and profile picture on Twitter. She continued to simp over Lapis and Peridot from Steven Universe. She began thinking about the kid and how she wanted to elope with him. She had the necessary resources, and he would absolutely be willing, likely perceiving Alphonse as the businesswoman MILF of his dreams. However, she had obligations to her father and the company. Chansey burst through Alphonse's kitchen window, landing on her tasteful rustic table that was made to look like it had not been fully carved. Can't hijack this. Holy shit, I thought you were Gwen, but now that I know better, Jack asked in flames, bitch. City of Rock. Girl, if I could get any one cock dick in a box with my business sense and handsome librarian style, young hot lexicon. Ew, that was disgusting. City of Rock. And also, that was atrocious. Raptama, ha 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 ha. Alice hit charge, who by now looked remarkably like a clumsy tall woman with dreadlocks on her neck and back. Alphonse fell sideways in her chair as it lurched forward toward the very surprised genie. Young hot lexicon, please take charge. WTF. Defense unicoism blocked Charge's attack, causing the Charger to reverse and race back out of Alphonse's kitchen. Mercutio licked his paws ever so much as Alphonse, who had once made him from a set of navy blue and gold bedspreads, wept basic tears. Raptama, please Charge take. WTF is the weirdest thing that I ever heard. Just then, someone slipped into the kitchen, dressed in a husky winter coat and thick scarf. Was it really her? It took Alphonse a few moments to place this face. Sure, it had been looking much skinnier before being put into the nice way she was by life, now dripping with sweat, and breathing heavily in the squalid kitchen seemed to have changed Emerald. What was a rare shock to behold, however, was that she also looked different on the outside. However, before Alphonse could marvel for long, cannibals rushed into the kitchen and started knocking over the furniture. A childish yet pleasurable parthenogenesis scene followed. The building shook as the cannibals and sex demons ravished Alphonse. As these actions were happening, Connie went right up to her own drumline and grinned. The implication seemed quite clear. She's long gone, brother. Then by this morning by the schoolhouse inn. Young hot lexicon. Can't hijack this. In City of Rock, where the screen names of the people monitoring and manipulating these events from afar. Young was a white SoundCloud rapper who prided himself in his output not being like other rap in that it didn't focus on guns, drugs, or money. Instead, on stringing really long words together. One can likely tell from such a description he was not as familiar with the genre as he thought. Raptama was a young girl who made Emerald go to Alphonse's house because she enjoyed FF ships and thought the two had a good chemistry. Can't hijack this was a man who lived underground and said very little to anybody. City of Rock was an old black man and a Van Halen aficionado. They were the ones writing reality as they saw fit, scripting the scenarios of one sick little aristocrat. Raptama was very keen on Alphonse having a redemption arc, but that went against the interests of their sponsor. They lived together in their little white van. Connie was drumming to the rhythm of the building's instability. A deep and inarticulate voice was coming from beneath her. The demons had been awoken. This itself was proof of the white van hypothesis. Finally, she could blame someone other than herself on the way her life had gone. Chansey's corpse lay on the floor. It had appeared she had been caught in the crossfire between the genie, the other assailant, and Alphonse. A demon approached it so that it may drag the corpse into a closet, but a cannibal scared it off and began tearing flesh from his leg. Alphonse was getting railed hard by a demon named Cesrathon. Did I invite you? Asked Alphonse. You said yes, didn't you? Asked Cesrathon. Alphonse had indeed explicitly consented to Cesrathon. After the sexual act concluded, Alphonse left the demon orgy and resolved to chase after Emerald. She wasn't in the demon orgy, and she wasn't outside waiting for Alphonse, so she must have been staying in some hotel somewhere. The apartment block exploded with demonic energy, killing everyone inside. The beam of energy traveled through the atmosphere and into space itself, carrying the souls of those inside for all eternity. The souls within did not have physical forms anymore, nor psychological barriers. However, they were all very bored. Alphonse was crushed by a stray piece of rubble. 671-705-8023. Who's in the basement? Brendan is an artist. We don't know enough yet. History is repeating itself. You've got to be sharp today. Can you give this to them? The fruit of this tree is not good. No one trusts Dean. He can't even read, not to speak of writing. Jed doesn't know how to write his name correctly. The people in the white van were very confused. Surely this isn't part of their plan, asked young hot lexicon. It can't be, right? Nothing that evil has ever done all at once, said Lep himself. Each wrong allows them to make another step in their vileness. Crushing someone is even more fun when you first hurt their self-esteem. If you trample the insect, it feels like walking on cotton wool, and this becomes more and more suffocating. It's even more pleasant if, for example, you put your victim in a jar with air holes and lid it. So what do we do now? Asked City of Rock. It's simple, said Can't Hijack This. We're free. We no longer have to pretend to like each other. We are no longer have to pretend this machinic status we have been granted is worthwhile or good. Indeed, to what extent how our very beings become simply vessels for our sponsors' demands. So Raptama said, does this mean there's no possibility for further development of her character? I mean, she had so much potential. She was somebody, and now she's nothing at all. That's just not efficient. Why all this work for nothing? I care not for the machinery of your collective knowing and conflict, only for my divine duty. Oh, we were the weavers of fate. Some fucking chunk of rock had the gall to shaft us. Only Chisheng wasn't there. His face was flaming red. 8603931837. What can I do? She's a sheriff around here. Johann is unhappy. I just missed Hubert. He killed his girl. Jason doesn't know what Sherry wants him to buy her for her birthday. Meanwhile, the kid was preparing to propose to Alphonse, not knowing her tragic fate. 209-654-8024. Marshall. Couldn't stop looking at Jean's picture. I think I caught a glimpse of something light blue behind the curtain. Leora works as a speechwriter. With the head of an owl glued to his head, the hairless man approached the kid. Sorry, he said. I kiss you, not duty calls. He added, you best not be getting inside the royal palace now. It wouldn't be fortuitous if I was seen with you. And neither would it be too desirable. If a passerby were to see us talking together like this, that would never happen in Boston. The kid set his hand on fire and raised it to his head, pronouncing, I wish for it. Lele would be a good fit for this job. 7155865365. Marguerite doesn't have much money in the bank. The light blue element was the eye of the little girl engraved in the tooth. Old Rufus had done some very naughty things in his time. Our store is always full of people. 80638999089. He died a quick death. He has a good knowledge of the internal affairs of Japan. Do you have any idea what it is? 91959855171. Don't forget to turn off the stove. At first, it was only Marguerite who burst into flame. However, soon everybody was doing it. It was as if the small flame the kid had applied to his hand had spread. All this just because we tortured a hoe. Is this divine punishment? What else could it be? One moment she was a healthy woman, the next she is a corpse under a rock. The skinned man approached the kid with a crown of thorns. The crown was replaced on the kid's head. As a reminder of your failure, he said. The kid then made a finger gun and aimed it at the skinned man. The skinned man feigned fear. The finger gun went off and the skinned man fell down. Whoops, he thought to himself as his consciousness faded. The kid sat down upon the skinned man's corpse and fantasized about the wedding between him and Alphonse. He staged many sexual fantasies within his head of him being allowed to let a rat crawl on Alphonse's breasts. He imagined them torturing so many hoes. They would both be naked. Alphonse would put the tube connected to the funnel up to the victim's nostril. And he would pour the castor oil. He sighed. There was nothing to be done about it. He turned the body and pushed it deep into the mud. He turned his body and pushed it deep into the mud, his emaciated body shivering, taking this moment to have deeper ponderings over why exactly he had those peculiar cravings toward human females who were tatted up in black. Perhaps it was the same desire that informed and drove him to want to pimp Mackenzie out to the poor corners of England for years after her biological mother's death, only to stop just as he was about to take the little girl from his home. When getting caught by the police only a few months later, getting caught once was enough. He didn't know what happened to Mackenzie. She was likely doing what she had been taught to do. Yes, she was probably fine after the fall of the Soviet Union. It wasn't long before child prostitutes were back on the streets. It was as much a part of the contemporary environment as the lodges or the skin curse, spontaneous combustion or the gas stations. He supposed he was simply something which served the environment rather than the environment created him, so that he may serve his divine purpose, or perhaps it was nothing more than escaping the world through sexual fantasies with two women at least a decade his junior in age and experience. He wasn't sure if he loved Alphonse or not. It didn't matter. Oh, okay. How was that? Anyway, sorry.
Holy fucking shit. A lot of that fucking killed me. I was laughing for a solid 75% of that. You need to talk to me, though, about how you did this exactly, because we've had people read AI-generated pieces before on here, but usually they're a lot less lucid and a lot more like scatterbrained than this. How much of this is you and how much of this is the AI, I guess, is my question.
A fair amount of it was. I think basically I logged into this site with OpenAI, and they basically have this playground feature where you can type in stuff and you can play with the little sliders and it can complete text for you. So it's not like GPT-2 the doc that I had on Google Docs where it can like reinterpret text. This was like completing text. And so I was
like
consciously guiding a lot of the generation, but also in retrospect, I could clean things up in the document. And I could also, you know, when something came up, a new character was introduced, I could, in the bits I wrote, just kind of retroactively make a little sense.
Gotcha. Well, this is fucking fantastic. I wanted to actually, GG said something in the chat, and I'm trying to find it here. He says it's like that your dialogue is like a character loading philosophy into a gun. And I think that's one of the best fucking descriptions of your work that I've read, because the way you weaponize philosophy in your dialogue is so vicious and so satirical and so funny. And this is one of your best pieces, I think, honestly. And actually, you should maybe just keep in mind that Misery Tourism is reopening to submissions in a few weeks here on January 1st. But no, thank you so much, Gianluca. That was real good shit right there. Thank you, man. Next up is John Padua. Hopefully I got the last name right. John?
Hi. Well, shit, I have to follow that. It's going to be
a lot of hard follows tonight. There's really no place you can be slotted in, I think, where you'll be safe. So,
well, this is going to read like a baby story compared. I don't know. Shit. Well, all right. So first off, thanks for having me and letting me read. I'll be. This isn't a Christmas story. I just wanted to read it because I wrote it in 2019 about the distant future of 2021, and 2021 is about to be over. So I'd like to read this story while it's still in the future and not in the past, I guess. So this one's called Crime Court. After the world crash of 2020, every country on planet Earth filed for bankruptcy. With no entity large enough to bail out the entire planet, government is forced to cease existence. In the new world, the world of 2021, all laws have been abolished and crime has been legalized. The land is lorded over by renegades, and looting is an encouraged career path. The world of 2021 is the world of crime, villainy, and destruction. In this world, the world of the distant future, one game show rules supreme, and that show is Crime Court. The rules of Crime Court are simple. Commit as many crimes as possible. Also, there are no rules. Those who commit the most crimes during Crime Court win, but those who do not commit enough crimes lose. On this episode of Crime Court, we follow a bloodthirsty trio of savage cannibal degenerates known as the Jones Street Eliminators. We open up in the heart of the Jones Street Eliminators hideout, which seems to be hidden deep in an underground area somewhere along Jones Street. Glass block windows let in only a sliver of light to keep the Eliminators in a constant state of nocturnal prowl. Bare concrete floors and unfinished walls are effectively placed to simulate urban fight zones, which helps keep the Eliminators at a constant alert level. There is also a water heater. The Eliminators are gathered around their diabolical scheming table, where they are undoubtedly planning crime. The first member of the Jones Street Eliminators, John Texas, is hunched up and gathering energy on a patched together recliner. The aforementioned recliner is, without a doubt, constructed out of the bones and stolen garments of Mr. Texas's victims. It stands as a testament to the man's cruelty and craftsmanship. Not only that, but John Texas is also hiding himself under a heavy and without a doubt stolen blanket, keeping himself unseen in case of sneak attack. To his left is the dubious and disgusting, the downright despicable Jackie Tiger. Miss Jackie Tiger also seems to be preparing for a sneak attack. She has chosen an effective hiding position on the couch, which is no doubt stained with the blood of countless abortions, and has made herself as flat as possible against it. Like her colleague in evil thievery, John Texas, Jackie Tiger has also used a blanket of some sort to completely camouflage herself from potential enemies. This blanket, however, is, of no doubt, made of the hides of the many baby seals Jackie has clubbed to death with her bare club. Jackie pretends to close both of her eyes, but we all know what's going on. She's actually keeping both eyes open very slightly to give the illusion of sleepy weakness while still maintaining complete ocular authority. And to Jackie's left sits the most terrible, the most horrible, the biggest fucking asshole of the Jones Street Eliminators, Charlie, the murderer, Miller. Charlie is sitting on the ground, ready to pounce, while also flipping through the channels of his crime television set. Charlie is no doubt checking the channels to gain intel on the next group of people he is going to viciously murder. Let's watch and see what this sicko's next move is. You can tell by the way he's pressing the buttons on the remote that he is ready for crime. And oh, what's this? On this episode of Crime Court, we follow a bloodthirsty trio of savage cannibal degenerates known as the Jones Street Eliminators. We open up in the heart of, hey guys, wake up. Charlie, clearly dazzled, screams to the other two. It looks like Charlie, the killer shithead ringleader, is about to divulge whatever dubious deeds he's been plotting to the rest of his crew. Miss Tiger and Mr. Texas seem to be metaphorically awakened from their positions. Look at this. We're on Crime Court. He screeches in diabolical shock, realizing that he is currently on this very episode of Crime Court. That's cool, Jackie bellows. What should we do? Hisses John hatefully. Crime, I guess, howls Charlie harrowingly. And it appears as if the flowers of rampage are about to bloom. There is a look in John Texas's eyes that I simply cannot describe. It's as if he has taken the form of a massive crime entity. He's getting up from his bone throne, and what's he doing? Bang. Oh my goodness, folks, how malicious, how terrible, what a vile monster. Why'd you just hit the TV? Shrieks Charlie. Crime, John howls in a rage. Oh, fair, says Charlie, in a haze of rabid fluster. Disgusting, 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 absolutely disgusting. Folks, it looks like the Crime Court has made its decision. And what's this? There's somebody at the door. They're kicking in the door, and it looks like they're wearing some kind of strange robes. He's stepping in from the rain. What's this, folks? It appears the strange, shadowy figure is, in fact, the judge. Today, on August 4th, 2021, we, the Crime Court, find the defendant, John Texas, guilty, guilty, guilty. And we sentence him to a life of freedom. Booms the judge. Oh, that's cool. Hey, Jackie, I think I'm going to head out, shouts John maniacally. All right, see you later, dude, roars Jackie loudly. Later, says John, pissed. And it looks like criminal crime kingpin John Texas is headed out the door. Clear the streets and lock your doors, folks. This man is sick, and he could be coming for any of you. That's all for Crime Court. Tune in tomorrow for another thrilling episode of Crime Court, and stick around for the post-Crime Court dialogue. And here it is, folks. He forgot his umbrella, Charlie says in a loud and angry tone of voice. No doubt Charlie, the murderer Miller, is both loud and angry. It appears as if John Texas, while standing in the rain, is about to monologue wistfully to the camera. Let's see what he has to say. It's only been a few minutes since I walked out of Jackie's basement, but now, as I'm walking in the rain, I feel like my life is different now. Before today, I was just John Texas, but what am I now? A criminal or a free man? It's strange. When I was a kid, courts used to enforce something, justice or equality, but now, what now? Crime is encouraged? It says a lot about things, if you ask me. I don't know how I feel. Is my punishment freedom? Or is my punishment the crime itself? Or is my freedom punishment? Crime is freedom. Freedom is power. Power is crime. Crime is freedom. Power is power. This says a lot, monologues John Texas, wistfully, angrily. The end.
Oh my God. You fucking slay me every time. Holy shit. That was just I'm not gonna be able to say much because I'm still fucking sorry. That was really fucking good. That was really fucking funny. As usual, like you have a real mastery of of word salad, right? Of like taking the structure of sentences and taking the expectations of any kind of genre or any kind of the expectations of prose, right? And delivering those expectations in a way that's like so hilariously banal and so like devoid of meaning. It's just so fucking funny. Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So up next, GG.
I gotta 500 to be over quickly. So this is a short story called Morning After a Snowstorm. Would you look at that, says Mrs. Bauer to her 15-year-old son Carl after an exhale of winter air. You can really see it this morning. She sips from her mug and places an arm around her son. They stand there together in their apartment's parking lot where she gently squeezes his shoulder. I'll tell your school you're sick or something. Once you're done, you can stay home today. Mrs. Bauer touches the back of her son's head. I know you're tired. Some wind lazily eases snow off of a tree branch. Carl thinks about tying his shoelaces tighter. The sun is not completely in the sky yet. You're going to do a great job, bub. Dad would be very proud. Carl sighs and spits on the snow, watching some melt. He slouches, sweaty under his winter clothes. He realizes the snow shoveling will make him even sweatier. Somehow all this sweat would freeze, he imagines. It would happen mid-snow scoop, a stiffness, then falling over and exploding into a million tiny pieces. The pickup truck approaches and rolls to a stop. Mrs. Bauer takes a deep breath. She exhales, touches her son's back, then watches him join 4 men with snow shovels in the truck. Carl looks back towards his mother. Mrs. Bauer finishes what is in her mug. She returns inside to refill it. The men keep their heads down and do their best to stay warm. Hey, says one. Carl turns his head. You're Bauer's boy, huh? Unfortunately. He said you were funny, the man says. He pauses for a second as if studying the boy's face, then nods a little, adding, Bauer was a good man, and offering Carl a thermos. Here, warm up. Carl opens the thermos, careful not to spill. As he brings it to his mouth, he notices its lack of heat, its smell. He takes a sip and makes a face. 2 men laugh. Better than coffee, says one of them. Carl coughs, then turns his head to spit on the passing road. He hears more laughter. The thermos is passed around and Carl has a proper drink this time. The sun rises a little more. That'll work, says one of the men, putting a hand on Carl's shoulder. What's the name? He extends his other hand. Carl, he says, shaking the man's gloved hand with his own. Whiskey sloshes around in the boy's empty belly. He looks up weakly at the man's smiling face. What is yours? He hears a reply, Carl is sure, but he can't understand with a nose full of alcohol fumes and a stomach not yet used to this. He nods to communicate that he heard, and the moment passes. The truck continues on its way. Carl pukes when they arrive. He uses his boot to mash his vomit into some snow, then asks for the thermos. It's put in his hand. 2 men chuckle gently, shaking their heads while smiling at this flesh-faced child in the sunlight. That's Bauer's boy. That's all I got.
Wow. Gigi, you've read this piece. I've heard you read this piece, I should say, a couple of times before, and I'm always struck by like how gentle and sad and bittersweet it is. This is like in some ways like the perfect archetypal piece of flash fiction, because it does so much so briefly, right? It's so wonderfully concise. It communicates so much without like, without like explicitly telling you, right? There's so much meaning and there's so much sadness in this is like little like page and a half like coming of age story, and I don't know, it's a great fucking piece. GG, thank you for sharing it.
Thanks for having me.
I also really dig how different the Christmas pieces have been so far in tone, in style, and everything. I'm really fucking digging this shit. Up next is Sybil.
Okay, thank you. So this is it's another short one. I wrote this a few months ago, and it's gonna come out next week in the Black Telephone magazine. This must be the place. I want to leave my soul behind and be just a body, but not this body. Any other will do. I meander into some dull casino. I feel myself go blind practically from the lights and deaf from all the screeching plastic noise. There's no one around. People flicker on and off in this city, all of them together. There are times when I'm fully alone, the only girl left in New Orleans, and times when the rooms are relentlessly populated. The streets crammed with people standing shoulder to shoulder, barely moving. I'm sick of both options. Obviously, I think of suicide. What keeps me from trying is the definite possibility that the next life is even more boring than this one. The objects here frustrate me endlessly. The blanket in my room, for instance. When I stroke it, the blanket feels scratchy and soft. But the more that I rub, the more I can sense another layer deeper down, where the texture is different, rubbery and firm, like an overboiled egg. It turns my stomach, but I want to feel it anyway. I often feel I am on the verge of peeling the top layer back and getting to the rubbery texture beneath. I pick away at the edges of things, my blanket, my skin. But it's like a plastic package you need scissors to open. Again and again, you're about to break through, your thumbnail slipping between the layers, but they won't pull apart, and there aren't any scissors. I go to an ice cream store and order a custard. I go to a cafe and order a beignet and coffee. Sometimes I am grateful for all the cats that follow me around here, but most of the time they annoy me with their incessant mewling. I don't have anything for you, I tell them. Go away. Maybe they don't believe me, or maybe they haunt me just to spite me. Maybe they're waiting for me to die so they can feast on my corpse. Descartes believed animals were automatons, little more than furry robots. What set humans apart was our ability to reason, as if robots can't do that. I believe we are all of us machines, not just the animals. Why else would we be stuck here? We can think our way up to other planets, but all of those planets will be just like this one. You can't use your brain to escape. The mind is a trap anyway. It's just another organ. Your memories trick you into thinking it's different, into thinking you're real, that you matter, that you even exist, but you don't. I think all these things as I eat my custard and my beignet. They both taste like sand. I crumble pieces of the beignet and toss them to the cats, who sniff the crumbs, but don't eat them. We're sitting on a hillside somewhere, in a field. I wish someone would put me in a body bag and carry me to a mausoleum. I could be a statue of an angel. I would love to stand that still. I swear, I could be buried alive and wouldn't even notice the difference. There are no fungi here, no mushrooms or anything. Nothing decomposes. It always stays the same. I dump my custard out of its cup and watch it dribble towards the cats. The field is full of golden flowers. The sun shines brightly, but it's not a warm day. My arms are covered in cuts that won't heal. I made the cuts myself, of course, but had I known they wouldn't close, I wouldn't have made them. Or maybe I still would have. It's hard with hypotheticals. I hear a sound like a ringing telephone. It's actually kind of sweet. Ring, 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 ring. I find that I like it. I look all around to see what the sound is, but the cats start their crying again, all of them together. Their hideous mewling drowns everything out. I decide to walk somewhere different now. Or perhaps I could just keep on sitting here. I'm sure it doesn't matter either way.
God damn. I'm fucking blown away by this piece. And I love like how you use like the trappings of a ghost story to tell a kind of reverse ghost story. Like like you use like the wandering spirit kind of motif, but it's about a person who can't get out of their body, can't escape life, right? And who is like trapped by physicality, and that it's so good. It's such a good play on that. And it's got this really like I want to say visually, but of course it's a written word, but like in terms of its imagery, it has this, like this really like bleak Miyazaki like vibe to it that I'm digging too. So thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Miyazaki vibe was strong there. It was almost like that a lot of those scenes in Spirited Away where like the ghosts are just kind of drudging on and like fucking just like it's got those vibes. Definitely beautiful story though.
Thanks, Freddie.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sybil. Up next is Jake. Now, I can't share the document for Jake's, so you're just gonna have to follow along here. Yeah.
Am I coming in?
You are coming in.
Started here. Sorry about
Jake, can you tell me where you're at now, Jake? Can you give me some sense of where in the timeline, in the multiverse, you are at this moment? And more importantly, can you access the chat and can you put a Bandcamp link in there so people can actually listen to the new Ghost Powder album? Shit.
Damn.
What's the weirdest thing?
things like this.
Jake, you must be a time traveler, because I was actually just going to say this thing has been running a little long. We're only about 60% of the way through. I'm going to do a little intermission here because I have to use the bathroom. Now, I don't know how. Well, I mean, you've seen the future, I guess. You've already seen me make the announcement that I need to piss. And so we're going to take a little hiatus here. We're going to take a brief intermission. I'll be back in 5 minutes or less, and then we'll pick up.
Wow, like holy shit. Wow.
That's wild that link, that Twitter account is no longer up there. I saw it. I saw it yesterday. It's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like I just watched Primer in reverse or in. Oh damn! Oh shit! You're coming in clear now.
I feel like you're almost there.
Almost, yeah. Or for a second. Oh wait a minute! Oh shit! Damn.
Now, when you were slipping through the time stream, have you encountered any issues with the spiritual veil?
memory is fiction. Yeah, that's kind of a mantra I've been saying to myself. It's like,
Yeah, no,
if you write about anything that really happened, it's still fiction. It's never the same. You know, even a photograph is never exactly how it was when it was going on.
yeah,
If we needed any more proof
yeah.
that Jake has traveled through time, I think
Yeah.
we just got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Undeniable fucking proof right there. So thank you, Jake. Stay safe wherever you are in the multiverse, wherever you are in the timeline. Stay safe, buddy. Bring us more
Godspeed.
reports, please.
Or I guess CERN speed, not Godspeed. CERN speed.
CERN speed. And I'm back. So next up is Gabe.
Sweet. This is gonna drop on Expat on Christmas Day. It's a piece that was rejected by the Saturday Evening Post back in 1958. Called A Home for Jebediah. Sorry, hold on. Wait, I just lost my place. There we go. It had taken Bennett Archer almost an hour to get his daughter Ashley tucked into bed. After all, it was Christmas Eve. She had that classic anticipatory adrenaline coursing through her 6-year-old veins. If it was a work night for him at Winchester's department store, he would have been furious. But tonight, Bennett was fully committed to playing along with every stall she pulled out of her nightgown sleeve. Her unjaded wonder gave him a fresh pair of eyes to see the holidays through, not his stiff managerial vision, which he didn't bring home with him for once. Her excitement was simply contagious, so much that he found himself baiting her, answering her writhing inquiries with his own questions when he should have been rubbing her head to sleep. Okay, say if Santa really did bring you a puppy, what would you name it? Oh, I know, I already know, she said, throwing her fists up like she was shaking his lapels. I'm going to name him Jebediah. Oh? Now, hold on. That's if Santa brings you a puppy, not when, he said, punctuating with his index finger. Remember, we still don't know if he's convinced if you've been naughty or nice, right? So let's make sure you get some sleep so we won't be holding that against you, okay? Okay, Dad, she said as she closed her eyes. But just so you know, I could already see what he looks like in my head, like exactly what he's going to look like. Okay, dear, we'll see, he said, standing up. He flicked off the light as he gently shut her bedroom door behind him. And God, I promise you I'm going to love that puppy anyway, she whispered to herself and to our Creator, who does his best. A man of faith, Bennett smiled to himself at his daughter's choosing of the name Jebediah. She likely meant to say Jedidiah, the character from the Old Testament, which translated to friend of God, but for once didn't feel it was necessary to correct her. He quickened and shuffled down the staircase when he heard Judy coming through the front door. She'd been out all evening last-minute shopping, and he knew she'd have multiple bags she couldn't carry all in herself. Besides, he couldn't wait to tell her. Hey, honey, let me help you here with that, he said, relieving her of her crowded weight of overlapping gift bags. Ah, thank you, Judy said, exhaling into an exhausted whisper. She did a double take at her typically stoic husband. Bennett, why are you smirking? He shot her a devilish grin. You didn't, you did. Shh, she's asleep, and yes, I sure did, he hushed, beaming with a smile like he couldn't believe it either. What happened? I thought they were out of that litter of beagles. They were, he said. He grabbed her by the arm, leading her to the front porch for privacy. But I got a call about an hour ago from the pet shop. Someone had just returned the last one they sold. What? Returned? Yep. The family decided they just weren't able to take care of it after all, with their work schedules or something. I don't know. I was so excited I think I kept cutting off the clerk, he said, giggling at his clumsiness, humbled to fully decompress into the Christmas spirit. Oh my God, Bennett, she exhaled. She exhaled deeply again, but this time her eyes began to well up. This is like a Christmas miracle, Judy. A Christmas miracle, Bennett. I love you so much, he said, quivering. She burst into tears as she leaned into his strong embrace, followed by a rare kiss to seal the tender moment. Catching movement out of the corner of her eyes, their heads slowly turned in sync to witness a descending batch of flakes contrast against the night sky, ushering in the heaviest snowfall of the season. Main Street Pet Company was located on the east side of Greenwood's Down Square, the center of the Indiana town's small yet bustling holiday thoroughfare. If you took a right, then another right, you'd be at the home of Bennett and Judy Archer, so it was of no inconvenience for the clerk to go beyond his call of duty to make this a Christmas little Ashley would never forget. Prompted by the elation in Bennett's voice, he offered to drop off the Beagle on their front porch at 6 a.m. Christmas morning, elaborately gift wrapped in a cardboard box with sufficient air holes for safety. Sweetening the deal further, he insisted Bennett wouldn't even have to pay until next week, given the last-minute fortune of the gift. Or whenever your holiday madness settles, he said with a laugh. The sun of Christmas morning shone on the newly fallen snow, glittering like immeasurable earthbound stars, covering every inch of the Archers' well-manicured front yard. The snowfall made a lovely padding of white to their lawn and hedges, along with Bennett's 1957 Chevy Bel Air. The roof and trim of their craftsman home resembled liberal applications of marshmallow frosting. Inside, the Archers' living room was loud with blinking red and green lights left on all night, inundating the atmosphere around an evergreen conifer tree, surrounding by countless elaborately wrapped presents. One may have assumed it was for an army and not just for the three Archers, but this was their one annual indulgence. With Bennett's 50% off deal as manager of Winchester's, it was nothing they couldn't handle. At 5:59 a.m., Bennett and Judy lay fast asleep in their bedroom, while Ashley curled up fetal under the warm weight of her red flannel wool blankets. The doorbell rang. "The ding-dong sounds like it's saying, uh-oh." Ashley often observed this with a giggle, a joke that never grew old. But this was the last thing on her mind this morning as she sprang up out of bed, instantly reanimated by the sound piercing her rest. She jumped out of bed, screaming gleefully, her tiny feet pounding down the stairs, stirring her parents awake. "Our little girl is tireless," said Judy, who had only slept 2 hours after wrapping all night. "Let's get up. I think she's opening the front door already. We've got to see this," said Bennett. "Mom, Dad, there's a present outside and it's bigger than me," they heard her holler as they caught each other's eye with a satisfied smirk. Bennett gave her a wink which elongated his grin. "Okay, hold on 1 second, sweetheart," Judy said as she came down the stairs with Bennett in tow. "This is a really delicate gift, so please let us help you with it." Judy put both arms around the hastily gift-wrapped cube and began to drag it gingerly into the warmth of the living room. Who wrapped this thing, she thought, as she looked rushed and careless, its paper barely covering the cardboard. But she wasn't about to complain and risk ruining the mood. "Go ahead, honey. Now you can open it," Bennett said. Ashley dropped to her knees, her eager hands tearing the paper haphazardly. "I know what it is. I already know what it is," she said, grabbing the butter knife Judy offered to safely pierce the last layer of tape on the cardboard flaps. "Careful, dear," said Judy. "I think this is a really fragile present." Ever focused, Ashley surgically cut the packing tape on the side of the box, then opened both large flaps to squeak in glee. I knew it, Jebediah," she said. The box shook slightly. Out of the confined darkness stumbled the Archer's new, larger than expected family beagle, his grand entrance interrupted by Judy's heart-stopping scream upon noticing he was missing an essential component. Components. Bennett caught his wife as she faltered to near faint while Ashley threw her arms undaunted around the compromised canine. Never had the world seen a more satisfied smile on a young girl. "Oh my God, what is that? What is that?" Judy screamed, her face twitching in disbelief that their Christmas miracle was an inexplicably living dog with no visible, let's be honest here, no anatomical head in any way, shape, or form. Yet its tail slowly began to wag, somehow informed by its otherwise sensory-deprived homecoming. "Ashley, get away from that dog now," said Bennett. "What? Why?" said Ashley. "Mom, why are you crying?" Judy could only answer with more tears, which exasperated Bennett's command. "Ashley Elizabeth Archer, get away from that dog right this second." Ashley merely winced at the harshness of her father's words as she continued hugging Jebediah. She wanted to plug his ears, but with nothing past his resolved stub for a neck, he lacked all the customary windows into the soul other than his enthusiastic nubby tail that was speeding up like a metronome with the excitement. He just wouldn't know it was the wrong kind. She squeezed him harder, now threatened with severance from her new pet. Exhausted, The dog bent at his knees, lowering himself to the carpet and onto his side. He pawed his neck lump profusely, yet humbly, the way a dog would show submission by rubbing his eyes, if he had any sort of head attached. What is he doing? Oh, he's just letting you know that he knows, said Ashley, matter of fact. He knows he's scaring you, so he's just trying to say sorry, but that he can't help it. Oh my God, said Judy. I don't know what to do, Judy, whispered Bennett, his pride of providing collapsing into his shrinking heart. Take it back, just take that monster back, she said, her screams muffling through hands covering her tear-soaked face. He's not a monster, Mom, yelled Ashley. Why are you being so mean to Jebediah? I just don't understand how he's standing, how he's even alive, said Bennett. Dad, he's alive because I love him, Dad, she said, kissing his neck that led to nowhere. Intuitively, Ashley knew she had to continue petting him. Jebediah's sense of touch was his first and last sense, therefore the most sensitive to compensate for his absent sight, hearing, taste, and smell. Tactile affection was his only fuel to sustain the motor of his tail, where most of his nervous system was located, which kept him conscious without a brain, pumping the blood through a strong and humble heart. Suddenly, Jebediah's neck stub pointed upwards, as if responding to a signal. Briefly breaking from Ashley's affections, he began to stumble clumsily towards Bennett and Judy. No, no, Judy screamed, burying her head into her husband's nape as she did a tap dance of anxiety, pushing herself into Bennett, her vain attempt to cease to exist. He did his best to cover her face as Jebediah advanced. Ashley looked on with a brave smile, her head tilted in hopeful sympathy to her mother. Here, Judy, I'm going to take you to the kitchen and give you one of your doctor's vitamin pills so I can take care of this, and I'll shut the door. No, lock the door. I'll lock the door behind you, sweetheart. They scurried half circle out of Jebediah's path into the kitchen. The headless dog stopped in his inept tracks. His tail slowed to a sway, alarming the little girl as she hopped over to him to resume her caresses. It's okay, Jebediah, she whispered into his neck, hands cupped. Mom and Dad don't have as much love in their hearts as they did when they were our age. Bennett slammed the kitchen door behind them. Judy trembled as she lowered herself down at the kitchen table, leaning her head into her elbow-propped hands. He ran into the bathroom, grabbed her prescription of Valium, then stomped back into the kitchen with a yellow pill and a glass of water. He placed the water in front of her. She stuck out her tongue, no words spoken, like a well-rehearsed communion. I'll be right back, honey. I'm going to take a closer look at that dog. What have you done to us, Bennett? She said with a gulp as she swallowed her medicine. He returned to the living room, red and green lights a-blinking, now with more sunlight coming through the windows, exposing the scene undeniably. His daughter laughing as she scratched the back of a creature he felt God had forgotten. Bennett hyperventilated as he put one foot in front of the other, his breath more arrhythmic with every step. Are you finally coming to play with Jebediah, Dad? Yes, I am, he said with feigned confidence, taking a knee like the hardest prayer he'd ever attempt. He outstretched his right arm to the dog's rump, slowly moving it forward through his fur. Well, I haven't burst into flames yet, he thought to himself, while struggling for the guts to continue. Ashley wrapped her little hand around her father's wrist, pushing it forward to complete the gesture. See, it's not so bad, Daddy, she said, as Jebediah's tail shook blurry with elation. Bennett jumped back, startled, all his synapses misfiring until he reached the dog's neck, where he knew he must investigate closer, to report back to Judy, for better or worse, in sickness and health. His fingers walked a spidery gait to his collarbone, inching into his body's final frontiers at the neck. Bennett's main concern was to check for signs of abuse, whether this had been a decapitation or a botched surgery of some kind. But his fine brown spotted white fur remained smooth around the area in question, seamless in fact. Nor were there signs of any less significant birth defects. And to Bennett, this verdict was more unnerving than happening upon gore or scar tissue, as that would explain Jebediah's misfortune away, leaving chance for potential redemption. Bennett, just please call the pet shop and get rid of it, he heard his wife scream from the kitchen, her words now slurring through sobbing hysterics. Daddy, you're not going to get rid of Jebediah, are you? Said Ashley, her eyes beginning to well up. Bennett took a deep, unsteady breath, now bookended like a vice grip by competing demands from his two favorite girls. Well, dear, let me just ask you, how are you going to take care of him? You mean how are we going to take care of him? Ashley reprimanded her father's gross lack of solidarity. Before I opened the box, Mom even said the gift was delicate and let you guys help me with it. But sweetheart, that's before we knew what kind of dog Jebediah was going to be. Why? You mean you would only love Jebediah with me if he was a certain type of dog? Well, no, that's not nice, Dad. Remember what you told me when Jenny first came to school? Not to be mean to her just because everyone else was? Well, I listened and now she's my best friend and now everyone loves Jenny now, she said, palms open in poignant surrender. Sweetheart, this isn't exactly the same thing. See, your mother is scared to death of Jebediah. I can sit here next to him, but he makes me incredibly nervous because I'm not quite sure how he's alive. He's alive because God made him, that's why. Ashley had turned the corner from defense to rage. Bennett's eyes welled up. But Ashley, dear, this poor puppy doesn't make any sense. We don't know what's keeping him alive. God is keeping him alive, Dad. Me and God are keeping Jebediah alive. Ashley's petting became accelerated, as did Jebediah's tail, taunting Bennett to finally break down. Why are you crying, Dad? She said, her voice suddenly soft. I don't know, sweetheart. I just don't know. He rose to his feet and ran into the kitchen to check on Judy. She was on the phone, slamming it down upon his return. Of course, the pet store is closed because it's Christmas, she said, defeated. Was Christmas. This isn't Christmas. This is a nightmare, Bennett. Judy, please settle down. Bennett, the only way I'm going to settle down from this is to get a hotel room or else I'm just going to take that whole bottle of Judy. Please listen. There might be a lesson to be learned here. Bennett, look at you. Now we're both crying. What lesson do we learn when you let a monster like that into our house? You gave a monster to our own daughter. Judy, let me ask you, did you think I was a monster when you took me in? Bennett, when we met, you might have been a godless drunk in the gutter, half insane without a penny to your name, but at least you had a head physically attached to your body so you could turn yourself around. But Judy, somehow, and don't ask me how, but Jebediah is a living thing. He's one of God's creatures, whether we like it or not. Then why does he make me want to disappear? Disappear, Judy? Do you somehow harbor a displaced guilt that he's like that? Guilt? I'm not the one who brought this unholy creature into our home, Bennett. You should be the one that feels guilt because you are guilty, actually. Dear, please, look at it this way. Every living thing has its own physical, anatomical limits, right? No matter what kind of creature it is, it must end somewhere to punctuate its unique place in the world. Right, she said, and that includes me, right now. She picked up the phone again. Who are you calling, dear? I'm calling a hotel where I know there's going to be a room for me with no headless dog, she said, eyes swollen and bloodshot crazed. She'd tell the front desk it was from wrapping gifts. When Bennett came out of the bathroom, wiping the last of his tears away, his wife was gone. What remained? His daughter and Jebediah, huddled together at the foot of the Christmas tree, waiting patiently for their parents to return so they could resume opening presents together. When Jebediah felt Bennett enter the room, his tail wagged with additional fervor. Dad, what happened to Mom? Where'd she go so fast? She said, petting her dog's brown spotted hind fur. He took a deep, cathartic breath. Sweetheart, Mommy went to the doctor. She had to go to the doctor again. You remember when she had to go to the doctor for a while when she was sick? Because she's scared of Jebediah? Yes, Ashley, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Are you still afraid of Jebediah? His mind raced with the force of a wind tunnel. I'm very uneasy with him, but a big part of me is just amazed by how much you love Jebediah. Does that make sense? Yes, Dad. Does that mean we can open presents now? Desperate for any semblance of normalcy, he nodded his head. The problem was, Bennett Archer didn't stop nodding his head. When little Ashley turned from her new dog to tear into the mountain of gifts, Jebediah's neck went up like a sad and thirsty divining rod and stumbled over to the compromised man, still shaking his head up and down, now in rhythm with the dog's wagging tail, side to side. But he's looking at me, dear. He won't stop looking at me. What do I do? He said. Don't be silly, Daddy. He's not looking at you. He doesn't have any eyes, she said. Then the red and green blinking lights from inside change, from new red and blue blinking lights from the outside, yet all in sync for this rare Yuletide. Then the doorbell rang. It's the police, they said, but instead of answering, he made a groaning sound instead. We got an anonymous call that there's a dog with no head. And then she hugged and squeezed him, screaming, no, don't come in.
What a heartwarming story. I can't imagine why the Saturday Evening Post would turn it down. Oh my God, this is so good though. This is, first of all, entirely fucking unpredictable. Everything that happens in this story, I did not anticipate at any moment on any level. And just like you have such a, you're so successful at like intimating little things throughout that like gradually ratchet up the tension, ratchet up the tension, ratchet up the tension, until by the end, like my head is nodding like Bennett's. Like I'm so stressed out by this story. It's so good, Gabe. And, man, such a merry fucking Christmas we've got.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Fuck, the part with like the God stuff, like where she was like, well, God would, would want me to have this puppy, and like, God will take care of him, and God, that was awesome. That was great.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness.
So good. Thank you so much, Gabe.
Thank
now,
you.
Speaking of Christmas miracles, Keith has a piece that he's going to read on video without me badgering him to do it. So that's miraculous enough. Are you still with us, Keith?
I'm still here.
Awesome.
This is can you hear me all right?
Perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, this is a time travel piece for as a bedtime story. It's a short story. It's titled Drugged in a Paris Closet, circa 1890. The drugs coursed into his ears, Ambien to his soul. He was fading, drifting into the mindless oblivion of dreams. In the center of the room, he saw two pianos, one stacked upon the other. An oil lamp, dimmed, sat on a small table near the window. Outside, he could imagine hearing the hooves of a carriage horse clopping on the cobblestones. A man sits at the piano. He is dressed in the same attire that he's worn every day for years. The man begins playing melancholic, haunting notes on the piano, a trying session for his neighbors. Tonight, like every night, and even during some days, he would listen to the music of the pianist. Over the course of 41 minutes, 10 pieces would be performed. But like always, he would only remember hearing a few. Each solo piano concerto was the same, beginning with number 1, the number 7, the number 2 through number 6. He rarely made it to the 3 gymnopédies that followed. He almost always passed during the Nociens. Sometimes, though not very often, in lieu of the Nociens and gymnopédies, he would bravely venture into the hours of vexations, only to awaken to the same. Vexations was a much different experience. The imagination is powerful, and coupled with the beauty of music, he relaxes and rests. As he travels into distant worlds, he ponders the thought that some drugs are much better than others. And then, like magic, he is gone, only to reincarnate later. The dreams of artists can live forever, and for many of us, their works are our drugs. The pianist-composer is past, but his legacy lives on. Oh, if only Satie were alive today. Eric would be so proud of Reinbert Deleu, Jean-Yves Thobaudeau, and the countless other artists that have interpreted and performed his works so magnificently. That's it.
That was so good, Keith. One thing that's been true of several pieces today is like we're seeing a lot of pieces that are like very concise and perfectly crafted, and this is another one of those, right? Like in just a few short sections, really not even paragraphs, you capture like something like really vivid and evocative about like the agony of artistic life. Even the fucking title is so good, Drugged in a Paris Closet circa 1890. And you really like, it's that like wonderful like concision, that perfect choice of like, you know, I'm repeating myself here, but each of these little sections is so expressive, and the whole thing says so much with so little, you know. So this is fantastic, Keith, and thank you for sharing
Thank
without
you for letting me
being
read the bedtime story.
forced. And it's about that time, really.
Thanks.
Thank you, Keith. Now, we're on to our last 2 or 3 pieces of the night. Up next is Brandon. Now, am I to understand that you have some retail horror stories for us?
Yeah, I figured this was going to be a depressing night because, you know, it's a Christmas night. So I figured I would share some hopefully entertaining little anecdotes from life in retail. It'll be concise. I don't expect it to be well crafted at all, but hopefully it'll make a few people laugh. And yes, these are all true stories. You always know that you will see some unusual things when you work with the public. Having spent over a decade working in retail, I've come to accept it as a fact of life. Much like directors have famously said, the worst thing they do is working with children and animals because they simply cannot be predicted. The same holds true for customers. In the past, I've encountered some absurd moments. A woman once took 4 packets of Cottonelle flushable wipes into the bathroom. When we sent someone in to see what was going on, she discovered that the woman had stripped naked in the handicap stall with the door open and was vigorously bathing herself with the moist towelettes. This woman was arrested shortly thereafter. I believe she was taken to a local psychiatric facility. I once had a man visibly high on something lean over the counter of the shop I was working in and whisper to me that he was going to slit my throat in the parking lot. An odd claim, to be sure, but as this was someone that I had witnessed pull a knife in a bar before beginning a game of pool that he was concerned he would lose and didn't want to be embarrassed in front of the girls he was trying to hook up with, only to be knocked out cold by the other guy, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I once had to explain to a coworker that she couldn't use the term porch monkeys to describe her neighbors leaning off the steps of their countryside houses to watch what was going on at the local gas station because it was a racist expression. No, she had not seen Clerks 2, yet somehow she defended herself with the claim that it was what her family had always said about those neighbors. Thankfully, she quickly declared that she needed to get her children to stop saying it. This time last year, we had a heroin addict stagger his way into an unlocked stock room to begin rummaging around through our hazardous waste bins looking for needles. After tucking a claw hammer into my belt, I asked if I could help him. He said he needed diabetic syringes. I told him to go to an emergency room or a hospital because ours were locked away. Never saw him again. I assume he died in a car accident since the fucker was driving. We had a thief come in one day to the same stock room while we searched the sales floor for him. After we discovered he had left, we checked the cameras. He hid himself in the bathroom, waited for the right time, stole one of my employees' lunch bag, then proceeded to steal a queen-sized air mattress and a few sticks of deodorant. My guess is that he's never played any kind of video game that involves inventory management because he wasted a lot of bag space on that air mattress. The worst part is, while he was hiding, he decided to use the restroom and only flushed once when he should have flushed twice. And yet this week, I had one of the strangest experiences in my working life. I encountered the fabled untamed Karen in her natural habitat. Sure enough, I had been called up to fix something, and she asked if I was needed for a return. Foolishly, I volunteered to help her out. Turns out that she had bought a take-it-home COVID test, one of the new cheap ones with a single swab instead of the usual 2. She explains that the result wasn't clear enough. I told her that it's against policy to return a used COVID test. She countered with, "I beg to differ," accompanied by a faint and threatening smile. She didn't know that I enjoy telling people no. "I don't know what you beg to differ on. Policy is policy," I elaborate. "Oh, but can I show you? I have it here with me in a Ziploc bag because I don't want anyone to get uncomfortable." Sure enough, clear as day, this test had 2 lines on it, the most threatening 2 lines you could see on a plastic stick, short of an X showing up with a pregnancy test waving it in your face. "Ma'am, that looks like a positive test to me. You should be getting another one to be sure, but I cannot return that for you." "Well, I beg to differ," she repeated, like some kind of primal sound that was intended to scare me off. "Who do I need to talk to if I want to fight this?" "Let me get the store manager. I already know how this will end, especially after we've had 4 team members out with COVID in the last month alone." I explain the situation, and we return to the counter where she again pleads her case. My manager, almost surprised to have the situation be real, responded plainly with, "Ma'am, that's a biohazard."
Man, a fucking biohazard indeed. Man, thoughts and prayers to all retail employees right now at this moment. Oh my God, every time I hear the Parch Monkeys story, I lose it. I can't believe that shit.
I still can't believe it happened.
Just completely. I cannot. I don't know how you do it, man. I honestly do not. But anyway, thank you, man. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing some Christmas cheer here. Rudy is up next and possibly last. I have a piece that I might read, but it's kind of long and it's kind of late, so we'll see what happens. But I do want to get
hold on now.
Yeah.
I think you should I refuse to read my piece unless you read yours.
Okay. Well, I'll do my best.
Your best. Okay, that's not an answer though. I refuse.
Okay, I'll do it.
Excellent.
The thing is, I was planning to go outside to read it, and I probably still will. So it's gonna be a little bit of a clusterfuck. But whatever. We still have 11 people here. We're fine. Okay.
So do you want to do yours first if you need to go outside? Or?
No. You do yours, and then because it's going to be a whole ordeal for me to get back in here, and it's better if it just be at the end, right?
Gotcha. Okay. So this is a piece real quick. Basically from my short anthology that I wrote for NaNoWriMo. It's called Pale Manipulator Music. The hook of it is a platoon of child soldiers baked on the brown, hacked into a necromancer's Spotify premium account, and it is now the soundtrack of their cursed existence. So the ones I'm going to be reading, I read 2 of these before, but the ones I'm going to be reading tonight are to the point where they can no longer deny, and the closer the better it gets, which is A Christmas Tale. These are fairly short, I think about 400 words each. So I'll just go into it, but I'd like everybody to note to the side, there's a thing there that lets you give visual feedback. Actually, if you just highlight any sort of words or whatever on the page, you can actually draw on this little doll and tell where the piece touched you. Now, I see some children have gone in here and vandalized the feedback section here, so shame on them. But if anybody wants to leave feedback, that's totally cool. Anyway, I'll start with the first one. To the point where they can no longer deny. This is based on a song called Depleted Uranium is a War Crime by a band called Anti-Flag. December 14th. It is on today, the year of our Lord, that I am giving testimonies about the big one before this court. The big one is old. She is so old that she has been traipsing around this continent or the other since they were all one continent, one love. She is older than time and space. She is much older than us, her boy and girl soldiers, me being at least my number of fingers old, plus some number that I do not know. She is the perfect age, perfectly well preserved for her age, and still cute if you're an asking gentleman. She is more old than the 4.5 billion years, which is the half-life of depleted uranium, and she is never half an hour late. She is a wizard and arrives precisely when it is economically viable. We have never, ever used depleted uranium in our doing of war. Like ever, as Taylor Swift would say. Depleted uranium is so hard that it pierces tank shells and forces the people out or dead, like what is happening when Cruel gathers together faggots outside a village and forces them to kiss, admitting wrong to the creator, or be beaten to tears, admitting wrong to themselves. I am not admitting wrong here. Depleted uranium lingers in the soil and firmament, creating problems for years to come, like a problem child who shoots dogs that are not strays with a nail gun. I am not admitting to killing any animals. Depleted uranium creates childhood leukemia, which diverts Ronald McDonald from his primary duties of hamburger cook to burial orderly as they fade quickly and become skeletons that eventually stand still. The skeleton on trial today, Grand General of the Big One, is capable of a great deal and has rarely stood still except as a stone wall among the flying bullets and shells. Indeed, he is standing in the stead of the Big One, answering for her, as she is very busy and cannot be here to be tried herself. I am not admitting to being a skeleton. Yet. For closure of my testament, I would like to tell you of my year of service in the Big One's armies, under the foot of this general, with lesser, unmoving skeletons under my feet. The Big One herself has always treated me with respect. When recruiting me by force, the Big One did not ask, as inferior militia commanders do, is it a boy or a girl? She asked, is it normal? When my mother and father tried to explain that I was asocial, in quotes, the Big One took me anyway, saying, what do you think we should do to them? People who say you're basically retarded. I am not admitting to killing my parents. The next one is called The Closer, the Better It Gets. It's inspired by a Girl in Red song called Two Queens in a King-Size Bed, which is a Christmassy song. December 25th. Today on our hunt for a Christmas fowl, we have found instead two Tweety birds. Their cage is a bungalow in the great and powerful district, where they are shivering for the December cold and for effect. GNP district still has grid and Wi-Fi, and because it is Christmas, Josh the commander says, you can shower here if you want. Though it is said by Misdemeanor Elliott in her song that she don't want no 1 minute man, the militia in general, and Josh in particular, does want that, because if you are taking any longer to shower, they are sure to cut off the water. When I shower, I wash only my hands. While we are commandeering 11 minutes of steam and soap bubbles in the bird's bathroom, Josh is questioning them about their tweets. You are two very noisy birdos, is what I am hearing of his words as he takes their information and whatever else he feels like. It is all in the box, screams one of them, between skin-on-skin noises. The cloud is what they are talking about. I make a friendly wager to Pascal, some corporal with nothing to prove, that they will exist in the clouds soon enough, and I am only a little shocked when I see Josh and a political officer leading them out. Shocked in the automatic stomach-filling way, because what I see is electric, building static in various parts of me. They are in birthday suits, and unless one shares a date with Creator, it is not their special day. We take them to another cage on the outskirts of town. This one is a hole cut roughly in red dirt. Anne and Peter, who spent this morning digging, object passionately to using this hole. It's too big for two dykes. They are skinny things. Just look at them. We have dug this here for 2 men. Yeah, this is a manhole. Manhole. Stop, Josh says. The political officer is giving Anne, the primary complainant here, a look that says, are you stupid? But doesn't actually say it. Until he does. Then it's both the look and him saying it. Does it fucking matter which hole you use? Josh asks, exhausted. Anne says something smart, dumb, that gets her backhanded. Her, it only matters before Creator joke falls flat on the ground like her. The birds seem scared, but out here in this wilderness, they're not tweeting about it. Overhead, missiles, stars, bang. 2 smaller, closer bangs. That's it.
Oh, wow. Wow, 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 wow. Man, as usual, the fucking wordplay is so on point here. But what I actually love the most about both of these are both of them end on 2 fucking absolutely vicious punchlines. And in both cases, it's a 1-2 punch, right? Where it's with the first, but I especially love like the juxtaposition at the end of this last one of the star, which is like, the Christmas tradition surrounding the star, and the fucking the summary execution of these two individuals. I don't know. There's just so much going. It's the same thing. I've been saying this again and again. We've had so many pieces tonight that are short and concise, and no word is wasted. They're just, these are really, really good, man.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Good shit. Thank you, man. Okay, so feel free to bail if you want. I'm going to try to read a piece. So I'm currently working on a Substack post that I hope will be out, that I plan to release before Christmas. It's not finished, but I've put together together an excerpt from it that I'm going to read, but I'm going to read this piece. I'm going to try to read this piece outside on my phone. So we're gonna try this and see how it works. Yeah. I'm going to put the link in the chat first, though, if I can find it. Oh, there's...
My will, we don't have all day, man. Hurry up.
Hold on. Okay, there we go. The link is in the chat. I am going to go outside, and then I'm going to hope to God that I can use Zoom on my phone. I will leave this one up because it's recording the meeting.
Your other identity seems to not be in the participants list at the moment. You may want to check that before you leave.
That's right, because I have to let myself in. Right.
Yep.
Right.
Just looking out for you.
I was like, why? That's fine. I can just click on the link when I'm outside, and then I'm like, oh no, I can't do it that way. I have a fucking peon on my phone. I don't have. Okay.
Same kind of problems I was encountering, man. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, it's hard
Sometimes
to be
you
in
gotta
2
go
places
outside
at once.
back in. Ridiculous.
Hey, Gigi.
Hello.
Thank you. Nobody was like acknowledging me. It was bothering me.
We're reading, Josh.
I like wave to you in the camera because I forget I'm not like the main character. So I thought that you were just everyone you were watching me. So
I am.
Wait, are you guys in gallery mode or are you in like speaker mode for the video?
Speaker mode, but I forget that other people aren't looking at me. It's weird.
What's with the low? Is it like an American holiday today? Like it's like there were a lot more people before, like last time.
That's my medication alarm. Sorry.
All right, we'll see how this works. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Bible scam.
Bible scam. Okay, yeah. Can you see the cross, kind of? I don't think you're going to be able to see me and the cross at the same time, but whatever.
I can see it good.
I wanted to read this outside for reasons that probably will become obvious after I start reading it. Did I put the link in the chat?
Yes.
Okay. And you can still hear me clearly even with the piece up?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, this is an excerpt from a Substack post, as I said, that's going to be posted hopefully next week. It's called On Complicity. I'm making up the weekly shopping list. This is what I do now. I do chores for my parents, like can't think of an artful way to say this, like a fucking child. Whatever. The shopping list will be the least painful thing I write this week. I comment offhandedly to my dad that we seem to be buying a lot of chicken feed. He says you have to feed them more during the winter because they can't go outside to forage. They stop laying too. This is why the Amish slaughter all of their chickens around this time of year, he says. He sounds envious. I bet he would do the same if it were not for Mom. What a horror. The gentle, peaceful Amish and their annual utilitarian holocaust. But of course I eat meat and understand the far greater horror of factory farming. Had an ex who was a vegan. I remember telling them that I'd like to go vegetarian, as one does in that situation, but didn't have the willpower. Maybe someday. The relationship lasted 4 years. Someday, as CCR predicted, never came. I made soup with the remains of our Thanksgiving turkey at my parents' request. I remember dredging the carcass out of the pot, picking through the broth for stray bones. My mom has asked me to find Christmas presents for my sisters' husbands, my living aunts and uncles, my cousins, my living grandparents, redacted, Rudy, and by the way, Rudy, I only left one. Oh no, I left one footnote, but it's all the way at the bottom. No, I can't see it. Anyway, the joke in the footnote, Rudy, is like, do you want an e-shop card or something? I got a shop for like 30 people. Sorry to spoil the surprise. The parish priest and a family from church with 7 or 8 kids who my mom has taken to affectionately, spitefully, calling her foster grandchildren. It's a daunting task, especially for a narcissist who hasn't spoken to many of these people in years and who never took an adequate or even polite, really, interest when I did. But I'm not complaining. It means I can guiltlessly add my name to the tag. My bank account is basically empty. I'm broke, and the affiliated feelings of terror and shame are growing. This will buy me some time, a reprieve, not a pardon. Debt or death will have me yet. My sister's first. She has an Amazon wish list, easy. While scrolling through, trying to find 3 presents that roughly add up to the amount I've been instructed to spend, I'm discomforted to see a book about prayer and another about grief. I'm not expecting this. I was anticipating the usual mix of trail guides, hiking and camping supplies, and tiny home paraphernalia. Those are still there, but I become fixated on the items that don't fit. My sister isn't religious, wasn't. I don't really know anything about how she is processing the deaths of our grandmother and our aunt. I haven't spoken to her about it. In my infinite selfishness, I hadn't really even considered that the pain of last year might lead her to reevaluate anything, that it might change her in any profound or lasting way. Frankly, I hadn't thought about her suffering at all when it wasn't happening, as it so clearly was, with her face flushed so red in my memory and her turning off the camera to cry when our parents told us on the Zoom call, of course, that my grandmother had died. And then again, when they told us that my aunt was terminal. And then the third and final time, when the news was simply that she had passed. And my dad then finally, not angry anymore as he had been at the doctors, at the reality, but so sad, so heartbroken before my eyes. Soon I'm pacing around the room, distracted, foggy, manic. And then I'm typing this, struggling to type this. God damn it, I was writing, here in the backseat of the car, tearing away at a paragraph that will almost certainly be relegated to footnote status in the final version of this piece, if it's ever published at all. We're on our way to my uncle's, not the one with COVID, Christmas party. He lives outside Albany, a 4-hour drive. The first half hour or so was silent, but now my parents are angrily discussing COVID restrictions. My concentration is shattered, fucked. Dad was tense before we left this morning, punchy, urging us to hurry up. I don't blame him. He's the only one who drives. The burden of this trip is disproportionately his. Still, now everyone is on edge. They're talking about the Amish market near my sister's house in Maryland. It's been shut down because the state performed an inspection and discovered that none of the employees were wearing masks. My mom says the restrictions are unconstitutional. My dad says they should hire a lawyer, sue the state. They might not look like it, but they have fucking money. Fucking Alec Baldwin, if he had an hour of training with a firearm, he wouldn't have murdered someone. Somehow the topic has evolved. My dad mentions an interview Baldwin did with George Stephanopoulos that I hadn't heard about before now. He's using the gangbanger defense. That's what those fucking gangbangers say. I didn't pull the trigger, it just went off. He continues. I transcribe what I can, miss a lot. George Clooney, who's the most liberal motherfucker, he's coming out against Unintelligible, saying it's impossible that it just fucking went off. My attention drifts, but not productively. Trying to do the thing on the cheap because he wants to make a few fucking bucks. He's a millionaire and now he wants to make people feel sorry for him because he fucking killed somebody. Now it's quiet again. We stop for gas. The lid covering the gas tank is frozen shut. My dad tries to pry it open with a screwdriver. The cover pops off instead, leaving an exposed black mess scar on the car's surface. Motherfucker. My dad opens the rear passenger side door and throws the cover in the back seat. He gasses up, accepts defeat, says he'll have to fix it later. A commercial on the radio actually uses the phrase, a new, trendier version of pizza. I'm flabbergasted. I hate it when reality makes a joke that would make you groan at its hackish obviousness if it were in fiction. The pizza in question also is made from non-GMO certified ingredients. There's some conflation of trendiness and health and moral responsibility at play here. It doesn't even sound like the restaurant is nearby. The Mississippi River is mentioned. Why am I hearing this? How am I hearing this? There's no constitutional right to recess. The topic is now how my mom should discipline the kids in her class. She teaches at the school owned by their church. One of her students has started stealing. He took a bunch of small toys from the class prize box. The carrot, the stick being outlawed even in schismatic traditional Catholic schools. These kids are rough. They're tougher than you or I are. You're not going to break them. The subject progresses to the task of cleaning the church, which the students and teachers are apparently neglecting. My dad muses sarcastically on the logic of procrastination. Why wipe your ass? Why wipe your ass? It's only going to get dirty again. The more fragmentary sentences and paragraphs I leave in this document, the more tangled the knot becomes, the more oppressive it all is, the less hope there is for relief or absolution. Under the television in the house where I grew up, there was a massive tangle of cards. The plugs for the TV, VCR, DVD player eventually, NES, SNES, Genesis, Master System, N64, and all their controllers and peripherals were lost inside it, had to be extricated painstakingly, laboriously, every time, or so I remember it. No pleasure, no joy until the card was traced back to its source, unwound, extricated, one loop at a time, weaving the plug in and out as a child with all that tension and anticipation, turning to frustration, to fury. How did I not break those cards, tear them apart? How did I not hang myself with one of them? Dad is praying the rosary aloud, accelerating. Mom joins in. My dad and my uncle talk about my grandmother. She decided at the last minute not to come. Said she wasn't feeling well, upset stomach, nausea, something like that. On the phone, she had told my father how much she was looking forward to the party, how important it was to see family while you still had time. My dad talks about how she had terrible postpartum depression after one of my aunts was born, how he enthusiastically missed a lot of school because she asked him to stay home and help her take care of his sisters because she couldn't get out of bed, couldn't handle it. My dad and uncle commiserate about their own experiences with antidepressants. I was on Zoloft for a few months after I had a breakdown and took a semester off from college, but that's an entirely different story, and I loathe writing so much right now. Too much for a footnote, too exhausted for another fucking footnote. I quit as soon as I was back in school and no one was watching. Haven't taken anything since. I used to watch The Simpsons in syndication religiously with my sisters on one of the 3 Canadian channels we got that wasn't in French. One of our favorite lines, "We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas." My dad went back on them. My dad went back on them when my aunt's cancer returned. My uncle has been off them for a decade. They saved my life, he says. He's a veterinarian, a partner in his practice, has a beautiful home, watercolors on the walls, pond in the backyard. It's just bad brain chemistry, he says. That's all it is. I'm standing off to the side, silent, despairing. On the way home, we stop at a shockingly upscale rest stop in Glens Falls. Metal "I Love New York" sculpture outside the entrance, floor-to-ceiling windows, interactive touchscreen maps of the Adirondacks, vending machines stocked with local soda brands and glass bottles. My root beer is a little bitter, mostly bland. I miss corn syrup. In the center of the building, suspended from the ceiling, is a chandelier made of interlocking synthetic deer antlers. I wish life would offer me less symbolism and more meaning. I had a dream last night that I was back in school. It was a Catholic school this time, I think. I remember feeling self-conscious because I had failed the previous semester, or dropped out, or GPAs were listed on the blackboard, but I couldn't quite read mine. I was asking myself why I re-enrolled, thinking about how much time I would lose, wondering how I would be able to do the things I wanted to do now. We changed classes. The teacher of this new subject seemed harsh, cold. A girl sitting next to me kept trying to talk to me. She showed me a book she had read, told me I should read it too. I really didn't want to talk. She put the book on my desk. The teacher yelled at both of us for interrupting the class. I wanted to explain that it wasn't my fault. Didn't. The girl starts talking again. The class gets rowdy. The teacher loses her temper and slaps the girl who won't shut up across the face. There's a big purple bruise on the girl's forehead. Or is it on the teacher's forehead? Suddenly I'm livid. I'm standing. I'm telling the teacher that she's not allowed to do that. I'm in the hall, headed for the principal's office. I'm at the receptionist's desk outside the principal's office. I say I need to talk to the principal, that I saw a teacher assault a student. Assault? Her voice is concerned. I say the teacher slapped a kid. Oh, she seems relieved. This wasn't the kind of assault she had in mind. I sense that she thinks it's no big deal. The principal comes out of her office. I start to explain to her what happened, but another teacher, not the slapper, appears at the desk and tries to bribe the principal to ignore me. I see her hand the principal 3 $100 bills. The principal examines the money and accuses the teacher of trying to con her. Says that they're just 3 $1 bills with extra zeros penciled on. They both laugh and play it off as a gag. The principal leads me into her office to hear my complaint. I wake up before I can explain anything. My father and I drive to my aunt's house. He needs lumber. My sister has asked him to make her some shelves for Christmas. Building materials are still scarce. There's never-ending pandemic, the supply chain, etc., etc. My aunt has been building a house in the Adirondacks in the midst of all this. They've been taking down trees, planing lumber. There's a sawmill involved, a lot of equipment I don't know or understand, that I fear, honestly. My father, uncles, and any visiting male cousins are constantly roped into the project, the heavy machinery, the noise. I've never been asked to help. They know. Just before we reach her driveway, I Believe in Father Christmas comes on the radio. I turn it up. Along the side of the driveway is a pen where a pair of pigs are housed, lingering near the fence as we pass. I avert my eyes, look off into the woods on the other side of the car. I know their fate. Don't want to risk a moment of empathy. My aunt and her boyfriend, ? Are local Voris, increasingly into living off the land, a sick, stupid fantasy that my father entertained at one point too, that helped inspire him to move his family away from the northward creep of southern upstate suburbanization. and into the boondocks, the first trauma, the original sin, the one act that, if reversed, might have saved me. Or maybe not. Fucked if I know. It's a satisfying story, though. One I've been telling myself for 30 years. It's easy to see the move as the starting point, the beginning of the years of poverty and domestic rage. The hiding in the stairwell while my dad, who is so much better now, screamed at my mom about the money he couldn't earn and the house she couldn't keep, the long freezing winters in a partly insulated house, the neglect, the dead pets and livestock, the vicious hicks at school, the growing isolation and resentment, the violent teenage fantasies, all of it terminating in anxiety and despair. 4 years in college, hiding in my dorm room, terrified of socializing, getting straight A's for fucking nothing, and then the disillusionment of grad school, which my emotional fragility and deep antisocial distrust made so much worse. And I couldn't write anyway, couldn't even finish a single paper anymore because the tension between my brain and the page was so high. And then back home again, and that was still hell. And the 8 years in New Hampshire and the dumb faggot defrauding his employees and clients and volunteers and wife just because he was a fucking hick from rural Maine who couldn't admit to himself or his family that he was a dumb fucking hick from rural Maine and a faggot to boot, and so hanging himself and fuck the rest of us, I guess. And then me in flight again after the bullshit with New Hampshire Catholic Charities, which I'm going to write a letter to the Boston Globe one day, I swear to God, whose name I'll capitalize just this once for emphasis. And then me, just me, getting everything I could have wanted, the unconditional love, the money for nothing, the little bit of literary notoriety, the community of artists, the beautiful climate, the sensation of finally being seen, and greeting it all with absolute, unmitigated, vile selfishness. And then 2020 and all the dead I loved and the sinking deeper, deeper into myself while redacted tries to talk and then to scream and then to throttle reason into that vacant corpse on my bed, watching YouTube videos, playing Tetris 99 once a day to complete his quests and then threatening suicide again when it was all falling apart. And now I'm back home again, and it was good for a while. Against all my expectations, in contradiction to the full weight of history, a time of small reconciliations, incrementally processed grief, and the slow but gratifying grind towards catharsis. But it's winter now, almost, and it's always dark, and I'm still single and unemployed and living with my parents and can't tell myself a believable story where any of that changes, so how good could it really be? When we park in front of the house, my aunt's boyfriend is outside, butchering a pig. Its corpse is suspended from the raised bucket of a front-end loader, legs splayed apart. Don't make a crucifixion comparison, I tell myself as I write. It has been skinned, mostly. I saw or heard or read somewhere that without the hide, the body of a pig looks a lot like the body of a man. I can now personally attest to the truth of that statement. There's a mostly extinguished campfire, ash and low-gray smoke. I watch from a distance. There's a puddle at my feet, blood and melting ice. I turn away and walk into the yard full of wire pens, the noise of chicken and geese, trying not to slip on the icy patches in my ridiculous pink and green Vans. I stop in front of a pen. There are no animals inside, just a kitschy windmill lawn ornament, a cartoon pig with wings. The wind picks up and the wings spin. And that's it. That's fucking it. I'm done. I'm done with it.
Damn.
I'm going back inside. It's cold out here.
Okay.
Okay.
Was this a guy walking his dog stopped behind you, like staring?
Okay, I'm leaving now. I'll be back.
That was amazing, dude. Great
That
job.
was insane.
Yeah,
what you
holy
got.
shit,
That
that was
fucking
incredible.
shit, man. I'm back in. He just.
All right, I'm taking my coat off.
Yeah, that was incredible. Just raw, flowing, just
My hands are
humanity.
cold. That's
That was
the big
awesome,
thing.
man.
Is my hands are freezing cold. Okay, so
Hey, so
so that's it. That's it, guys. I will, as usual, I'll leave the
William, I gotta say, that's like, that was like, you listen to down coat, you know? I mean, that was some fucking journey through time. We got the time, I mean, that was, and just to get the peak of that, that cross with the Christmas lights on it. This should be, that whole thing could be made into such a brilliant video.
I wish I could have gotten a better angle on the cross, but
that's right. Just that was enough. It was like getting smacked with it in the face. It worked.
Oh yeah, holy shit. I just want to direct your eyes to the chat. There's a message.
Take a look.
Yeah, so that was really good, obviously, but in the chat there's a link to a post that you might want to take a look at.
Oh no.
And I should note that since we learned about time travel tonight, as Jake has been so kind to, point out certain theories and certain other things, even if you escape responsibility for this tonight, in this reality, in this year, in this time, in this place, you cannot escape it forever.
I am not going to perform a dance from Canada or what? I don't even know what I'm reading, man. But I do know that I'm not going to do anything else tonight. That's for damn sure.
But no, that was awesome, man. Like, honestly, like the one paragraph that goes hard, I think, or the one that I felt went the hardest was the the Catholic Charities one, or the New Hampshire one, whatever. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The one that went fucking hard as shit, and it was just a perfect like mix of like the way you started out, like when you say like I don't know how much. I mean, I know you're inside right now, but
yeah.
The thing that's like he's better now, of course, and then you go into more shit, and then pile that on top of that shit, and then go harder and harder and harder and harder. It just becomes such a death spiral of prose.
That endless fucking sentence was actually not even supposed to be there. So I
well, keep it. That is.
So, I was.
Yeah.
I wanted
it was supposed to be there.
About the pig, and I was going along, and I reached that point while I was writing, and I'm like, well, I've got to where I wrote like the original sin thing, and I'm like, well, I need to expand on this a little bit, and then it was like, it just came out. I was like, damn, okay, that's good. I had intended for that to be near the end anyway.
Yeah, damn.
But so the final piece, this started out, you can't tell because I've excised a lot of what's going to be in the final piece because it's not done. This is probably about half of it. But this actually started out like I was trying to write a piece about like the Rittenhouse trial and the Alec Baldwin thing, which appears earlier in the part that's not here. And then it became a piece about COVID and Christmas and being sad. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. I am going to.
By the way,
yeah.
I think this is well. Have you read? And I'm just reading now, and I learned today when I posted the photo that everybody's read him. Knausgaard with My Struggle.
No, I haven't.
Mein Kampf, the other one.
The other Mein Kampf.
The other Mein Kampf.
And he got into. I mean, it's intentional, of course. And I don't know if you know much. It's 6 volumes. It's 3,500 pages of autobiographical fiction. Anyways, I'm reading it, and 1 in 10 people in Norway have read or a part of this. It sold 500,000 in the Norwegian. That's 1/10 of their population. It's nuts, and it's acclaimed. And I'm reading it, and I'm understanding why. But hearing this, like, I honestly just feel like there is I know you were talking about this as a piece and you read half the piece. I just feel like it's a novel, and I feel like with what I'm working on with pegging, I don't want to think of, I don't want to do the work. And so I just try and keep thinking of it as this piece, even though people even here at the last reading were like, oh, there's a world here, there's whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel the same way. hearing you read that, I have the same reaction I think that I got to when I read that, in that I just think that there is enough here, and there is an interest. I mean, there's wide appeal, and Knausgaard has shown me that you can still do that. This is rambling. Also, the first time I've drank in 18 days, mind you. But what I wanted to say was, I think that this voice, it was so consistent, and clearly you are very good at self-editing. But just there's so much here. The revelation in an Amazon list, the scene with the vulnerability of your father, the chicken feed, Jesus Christ. I just think it's like a long form, like, I don't know. I'm interested to see what you think the piece is. I'd be really interested to see that. But I just hope that you're considering something larger than that.
I mean, in some way, Josh, I kind of am. So one thing I'm thinking about right now and is taking some of my like quote unquote my Substack pieces, right? And some of the other like more critical like and autobiographical pieces that I've written, and maybe putting them together in some kind of collection, in which case, in my mind right now, this piece, which will be longer because there's, like I said, there's a lot of cutout, would be near the end of that collection. I'm working on another piece, maybe that's a companion piece, a post that's going to be a companion post to this one, hopefully, if I can finish it. That I think right now I'm thinking might be that this piece I read might be the penultimate piece in that collection, and the piece that I'm working on too might be the final piece in that collection. But I'm not 100% sure about that. We'll see how this plays out, basically.
I saw when you posted about the collection, and I get that, and I've also read some of the criticism pieces, which are good. You mentioned criticism. I just felt like this and the cornfield or lack of cornfield piece and whatnot fit together. And I just thought, when you mentioned the criticism coming in, I mean, I'd be interested to see how the pieces play together, and that might just very well be the ideal format for it. But I just kind of thought those two things were in a certain direction. I've read some of the criticism stuff, and I just wondered if you were shying away from just doubling down into this stuff. I don't know, but in any case, it was incredible. Of course, everyone agrees.
No, thank you, Josh. Thank you a lot. And I am thinking about that. Maybe I'll talk to you later at some point about like the ideas that I have when I have a clearer sense. What I know right now are the pieces that are going to go into that collection, if it exists, aren't done, right? And until they're done, I can't think about the collection. GG, the piece I think you're talking about in the chat, GG, is the Edgelord at 35. And in my mind right now, that's the first piece. And this would be like nearly the last piece, because I see that piece is like so morally vacant, and like, and I'm going on too much and I should shut this down, but that piece in my mind is like really like me at my most like selfish and vile. And this piece, I think it is like a piece of like, in my mind anyway, it's like a moral reckoning kind of piece. And so I see that like there might be a journey there. But anyway, I'm talking too much about my shit. This has been a long thing. I'm going to end the recording, but we'll keep the chat open. So if you were watching this on YouTube after the fact and you managed to make it through all 3.5 fucking hours, God bless you and Merry Christmas. This has been Misery Loves Company. We do this every Friday. We're not going to do this for the next 2 weeks though, but starting again in January, every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And that's it. We're fucking done.